I have a sweet at the end of the world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 701, Landing on the cruise ship. On the high seas, the Royal Caribbean cruise ship sailed straight. Not far away, two Black Hawk helicopters approached, slowed down their flight speed, and remained relatively still with the cruise ship. At this moment, Jiang Chen was sitting in the helicopter, looking at the cruise ship outside the window, his brows knitted together. Blood everywhere. On the white painted ship wall, the glaring red was so obvious. Looking around, whether it was the waiters or the tourists, except for the living dead, there were dead people. Ivan, who was sitting opposite Jiang Chen, had a drop of cold sweat on his forehead and spoke with difficulty. Even though he was used to hell in the Ukrainian civil war, and even though he had been to Cagayan, he could not remain indifferent to what he saw. At this moment, the soldiers sitting in the helicopter had expressions on their faces. Jiang Chen's expression was normal. After all, such a scene was not very rare in the end times. Sitting in his seat, he could clearly see a beautiful woman in a bikini, with her head drooping with only half of her face left, staring blankly at the sea level outside the railing. There was also a man with a belly exposed, lying on the ground gnawing on a bloody corpse. And we may be in trouble. Should we hand it over to the United Nations? Ivan looked at Jiang Chen and asked. The radio life signal detection device found that there were signs of human life activities in every corner of the cruise ship, in the bar, kitchen, and some guest rooms. Similar to the T-virus in Cagayan City, not everyone will be infected once, and many people will only become zombies when they are infected for the second time. Of course, there are also unlucky people who cannot become zombies even after the second infection. Such people often become zombies food, and their entire skulls are gnawed away one by one, and they are torn into pieces in pain. Landing, Jiang Chen said lightly. But Ivan's expression was a little hesitant. Authorization to open fire. Taking a deep breath, Ivan nodded. Understood. To this day, the United Nations has not yet made a final conclusion on the zombies in the biochemical crisis that broke out in Cagayan City. Whether shooting zombies constitutes an anti-human act is still in an ambiguous position in international law. No one wants to be called an executioner, and no one wants to be tried by the families of the deceased, the onlookers, and the International Court of Justice after a drug that can better solve the infection problem is developed one day in the future. But at this moment, there is no time to care about so much. Jiang Chen wanted to know why the virus broke out on this cruise ship. The black ship, which had been silent for nearly a year, surfaced again. He couldn't miss this opportunity anyway. What's more, the special nature of the Black Ship organization also made it inconvenient to disclose it to the United Nations. Before handing the case over to the United Nations, he planned to collect and destroy all clues. Of course, the battle video is indispensable. The two Black Hawks descended in altitude one after the other and dropped ropes from the hatches on both sides. The hook was hung on the rope, and a total of 12 fully armed soldiers rappelled down to the cruise ship's outdoor swimming pool. The zombies slowly turned their stunned eyes to the living creatures that suddenly broke into their field of vision. The leading soldier took a deep breath, made two consecutive gestures to his comrades behind him, then quickly raised the muzzle of his gun and shouted fiercely, "Fire!" The orange-yellow flames flickered, and the rifle bullets jumped on the deck of the cruise ship. Roar! Howling, the zombies rushed towards the landing soldiers. The two Black Shadow helicopters set the angle, and the gunner aimed the fixed grenade launcher at the steel stairs leading to the top deck, and then pulled the trigger. Boom. Steel fragments mixed with flesh and blood flew in the air. The stairs were blown into iron slag, and the zombies who tried to rush to the top deck from the lower deck fell back. Under the cover of air firepower, the soldiers on the landing deck were divided into two teams and quickly rushed to the stairs. Under the protection of the mechanical exoskeleton, the teeth and claws of the zombies pose no threat to the soldiers of the starring trade. And the remaining T-virus is also no deterrent to those who have been injected with the E-level gene drug. Team A went to the captain's room to stop the ship, and Team B rescued the survivors. In view of the particularity of the incident, the 4th level alarm has been upgraded to a 2nd level alarm, and the starring Marine Corps is rushing to reinforce on a small landing ship. Jiang Chen glanced at the cruise ship that was already billowing with thick smoke, and took the tablet connected to the battle video from Ivan. Garrett, a former US Marine Corps soldier, served in Iraq. Like most of his comrades, he chose to join a private military contractor after retiring. Originally, Blackwater and Clover Jungle were both his options, but in the end he chose Starring Trade Company. He really didn't want to go back to that hellhole of Iraq. Spending the rest of his life on a scenic island in the western Pacific Ocean was his dream life, not working for the bigwigs on Wall Street and the gardener living in the White House. What's more, the salary offered by Starring Trading is not low, and there is also a reportedly considerable pension after retirement. Unfortunately, however, reality seems to be somewhat different from ideal. Not only did he not stop, but at the beginning of the year, he also fought a modern war with Starring Trading. He also airdropped into the zombie-ridden Cagayan City for peacekeeping. Is this really a military contractor? Fortunately, Starring Trading has a high income, is protected by various high-tech equipment like plugins, and the casualty rate of the troops is also surprisingly low. Sometimes he can't help but think that the exoskeleton he is wearing is not as good as the one lying in the DARPA laboratory. For popular science, DARPA is translated as the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency of the United States, and can also be understood as the SHIELD in reality. From the internet to GPS, there is the shadow of this guy behind them. With his excellent combat qualities, he was incorporated into the Starring Trading Rapid Reaction Force after the Moro War of Independence. Originally thought that the days to come would be more leisurely, but I didn't expect to encounter bad luck again today. Those damn zombies. Damn, where did it come from? He walked through the red carpeted corridor and rushed to the door of the hall. The captain's room was located on the top floor directly above the hall. The power supply system had not been interrupted, so he could take a shortcut through the elevator. After confirming the map on the helmet screen, Garrett called his comrades to prepare to break in at the door. Driven by the exoskeleton, he stepped forward and kicked the iron door of the hall directly, sweeping the zombies behind the door and flying out. He raised his hand and used the butt of the gun to smash the brain of the zombie that rushed over. Garrett held the rifle level without hesitation and pulled the trigger with his comrades, who broke in from both sides of the door. Bang bang. The bullet smashed the wooden decoration and the flesh and blood of the zombies into pieces, flying in the empty hall. From the clothes, it can be seen that a dance was being held here when the zombie virus broke out. Halfway through the dance, the singing stopped abruptly, and the men and women in the dance floor bit each other at the same time. Just thinking about it makes me feel so fucking disgusting. The zombies kept pouring in, and the 6-man team's firepower network gradually couldn't hold up. Garrett made a fierce gesture to his comrade, and Norman, who was the fireman, understood and took out a grenade launcher from his backpack and fired a rifle grenade at the dense zombie area. With a bang, more than a dozen zombies were blown away, and those who were not dead fell to the ground with missing arms and legs, grinning and moving. Then another 5 rifle grenades flew over, and the dense group of zombies in the dance floor suddenly fell down like wheat being cut. At the door, Garrett and others fired alternately, and they were quickly cleared. Safe. Relieved, Garrett lowered the rifle in his hand. But at this moment, intermittent cries for help suddenly came from the corner of the hall. Help, help me. Norman put down the grenade and immediately raised the assault rifle in his hand. It's a survivor. Maybe it's an infected person. Save. Garrett was silent for 2 seconds. Is the combat recorder on? On. Save people. I'll go. Garrett made a warning gesture to his comrades, then lowered the muzzle of the gun, alerting the zombies that were not yet dead. Facts have proved that his caution was right. Just as he stepped over a hand hanging on the ground, the crawling zombie suddenly shook as if awakened and bit his leg. Garrett reacted quickly, directly raised his right foot to avoid the bloody mouth, and then stepped on its face, crushing its skull into ketchup. Looking at the red and white ground, Garrett's eyebrows twitched. Nice kick. Bill whistled. I think the captain needs to apply to the company to reimburse the psychiatrist's bill. Norman frowned. Shut up. Cursing and kicking the body away, Garrett suppressed his discomfort and trotted towards the direction of the cry for help. "Okay, you'll be fine." Reaching out and pulling open the long table that had fallen in the corner, Garrett's expression suddenly froze. A body that obviously didn't look like a living person, and a cell phone and C4 stuck to the back of the long table. That wasn't a cry for help at all, it was just a recording. "Get down." Roaring wildly, he suddenly fell backwards to the ground. At the same time, he had already felt a hot air wave hitting his back. Boom. Dust rose up and covered the entire hall. Not just one long table, but almost 1/3 of the long table had C4 the size of a cigarette box stuck to the ground, covered by the tablecloth, and it was almost impossible for anyone to notice it. These bombs were buried earlier, and Tanaka originally planned to use them for a treat. However, he didn't expect that starring trade actually received the cruise ship's distress signal and sent out a rescue team so quickly, which was really beyond Tanaka's expectations. He originally thought that at most he would encounter the Philippine Coast Guard, and maybe he could even rob a better ship. Standing on the floor directly above the hall, Tanaka shook his head and threw away the detonator in his hand. There was a rare absence of smile on his face under his hat. For a long while, he looked at the dust downstairs and muttered to himself, "I thought I could take at least 2 away, but in the end I couldn't get rid of any of them." He threw the rifle across his waist to the dance floor several floors below, took out a lighter from his pocket, and lit a cigarette for himself. He exhaled a puff of smoke and sighed. Another life wasted. The cigarette fell to the ground, and the flames suddenly rose, sweeping across the gas line covering the floor in an instant. The flames burned upward along the trouser legs. Tanaka smiled and took off the cap, disappearing in the rising sea of fire. "One Zangzi and one heart. I wish you everything goes well, fellow book friends. Happy Dragon Boat Festival. I'm free all day today, Chengsing. I will stay in the dormitory and write all day and explode tomorrow. Students who have monthly tickets, please vote for me." Chapter 702. Approval of arrest. The power system was cut off, and the hall was plunged into darkness. The only thing that could be seen was the flames burning on the platform directly above the hall. Burning liquid dripped from the edge of the platform from time to time, and the burning smoke was densely covered above the hall, like a dark cloud that would not dissipate. Cough, cough. Norman pushed away the stone slab pressing on his chest, and struggled to raise his body with his rifle. The polyethylene bulletproof plate on his chest had been dented and cracked, pressing on his sternum. He reached out and pressed on his left arm, called up the holographic screen, and clicked to remove the front armor. There was a hissing sound of air filling, and he pulled off the bulletproof plate on his chest with force. Dust was everywhere. Garrett. After catching his breath, Norman opened the visor of his helmet, stood up and shouted, "Damn it, Bill. Cough, I'm not dead yet, here." The voice came from the communication screen. Hearing the voice, Norman immediately turned on the tactical flashlight, searched around, and soon saw the hand standing upright in the rubble. Running forward with a rifle in hand, Norman used his hands to dig away the stone pressing on Bill, and pulled Bill out of it. Under the driving force of the mechanical exoskeleton, this little weight was nothing. "Shit, if you press on my leg for a while longer, it will be useless." Sitting down, Bill gritted his teeth and removed the deformed right leg armor. During this time, Norman rescued 3 more comrades one after another, but he couldn't find the Captain Garrett, no matter how hard he looked. Garrett. Damn, where is he? The life signal detection device was on the captain, and it happened to be the captain who was missing. Norman anxiously searched for the captain's previous position, but the shockwave of the explosion had blown Garrett to where he was. Not to mention the location, even life and death were unknown. What about the mission? "Bill, you take Scene and Freddy to the captain's room. Jim and I will stay here to find the captain." "Okay." Bill nodded and gestured to his comrades. "Wait. What happened?" "Be careful on the road." Norman looked into his eyes and said seriously, "Our enemies are not just zombies." Suddenly, several figures flashed in from the door, and Norman, Bill and others immediately raised their rifles. The 2 teams aimed at each other. The tactical flashlight under the muzzle made him squint his eyes, and he couldn't even look at who was at the door. At this moment, a hoarse electric current sound came from the communication screen. "Our own people." Norman was startled and immediately confirmed the green dot on the map and then lowered the rifle in his hand. It seems that they were unconscious for a while after the explosion, and during the time they were unconscious, the reinforcement of starring trade had arrived. Judging from the digital camouflage mechanical exoskeleton, the other party is indeed a member of the Marine Corps, the main combat unit of starring trade. Like Captain Garrett, Norman was transferred from the Marine Corps to the Rapid Reaction Force, so he was very familiar with this unit. But what he didn't expect was that behind this unit, he saw an unexpected person. Jiang Chen, the boss of starring trade. How could he appear here? The soldiers who entered the hall were divided into two teams. One team turned on the life detection device to join the search and rescue work, and the other team stayed beside Jiang Chen. Protected by more than 10 Marines, Jiang Chen walked in front of Norman. Norman put down his rifle and immediately stood up and saluted. What happened? Jiang Chen glanced at the debris on the ground and asked in a deep voice. We broke into the hall and cleared the zombies. The captain heard the cry for help and went to see, but someone detonated a bomb. Norman reported immediately. Jiang Chen nodded, did not speak again, but looked at the platform directly above the hall. The interior decoration was ignited, and the fire had begun to spread. Even at a distance of dozens of meters, he could still clearly feel the rising heat. After a long silence, Jiang Chen suddenly laughed, shook his head, and said to himself, "It seems that my methods are still too merciful." "Sir?" Norman asked doubtfully. "Nothing. I just think that some villains should be treated like zombies. Before they cause more harm, shoot them, regardless of the consequences, and stop their hearts." "Sergeant Norman, do you agree with me?" Jiang Chen has never taken the black ship too seriously. Or rather, even if he did not invest too much energy in investigating it. Takeda Pharmaceutical is a Japanese company with a good position in Japan, and the risk of conducting military operations in developed countries is very high, not to mention that the FBI and CIA have already intervened in the investigation. It is the father's business to spank his son, so Jiang Chen did not care about it. Although a ghost agent was sent out, she has never been authorized to conduct illegal espionage activities such as arrest and infiltration, but simply to collect intelligence. He originally thought that the black ship would be more restrained under the constraints of the Japanese government, but he did not expect that he was wrong. Although the black ships were attached to Japan, they were obviously not completely under the command of Japan. In the final analysis, it was unrealistic to expect a group of terrorists who wanted to destroy all mankind to obey human commands and to restrain themselves according to the situation. Soon, the Marines dragged Garrett out of the ruins. "Are you still alive?" Jiang Chen asked. "The vital signs are intact, but very weak. You need to be sent to the hospital for emergency treatment." The soldier carrying the stretcher replied. "Go quickly." "Yes." The fire was getting bigger and bigger. The soldier who was protecting Jiang Chen took 2 steps forward and whispered to Jiang Chen. "The fire is out of control. Please retreat, sir." Jiang Chen nodded, said nothing, and turned away. Under the escort of a group of soldiers, Jiang Chen returned to the helicopter. Looking at the cruise ship from a distance, I saw that the fire had spread to the middle of the cruise ship. The entire cruise ship was like an alcohol lamp floating on the sea. More than 200 survivors huddled on the deck of the rescue ship, their faces showing no joy of surviving the disaster, only deep fear. 3,000 tourists, who originally bought tickets to enjoy their vacation, did not expect to encounter such a hellish horror in the Pacific Ocean with a gentle breeze. The child leaned on his mother and cried loudly, and the man gently patted the woman's back, saying something that could not even comfort himself. Medical staff shuttled on the deck, examining the people and injecting the anti-T-virus vaccine produced by future human biology. The evacuation work was successful. Some people were injured, but no one was fatally injured. The worst was the sergeant named Garrett, who was injured in the spine by the explosion. I'm afraid that he can only spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. The fire was getting bigger and bigger. If it burned the fuel tank, the cruise ship would likely explode. In order to avoid being affected, the helicopter and the rescue ship evacuated immediately after completing the evacuation work. Jiang Chen looked at the cruise ship that was gradually going away expressionlessly, and at this moment, his cell phone suddenly rang. After answering the call, Jiang Chen put the phone to his ear. Hello. There is a survivor named ZHU Sun Jiao. When we found him, he was tied to a bathtub with water running. He was unconscious when he was rescued. Because we suspect he may be related to this terrorist attack, our medical staff has given him special care. You did a good job. Send him to Crescent Moon Island. I will ask him in person. Yes. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Chen did not put away his phone, but called Asia. Tell our ghost agent in Japan. Within a week, I hope to see the president of Tequila Pharmaceutical appear in the interrogation room of Crescent Moon Island. Chapter 703. Do you want revenge? In the hospital on Koro Island, Garrett was staring at the ceiling in a daze. He was not yet 30 years old, but the doctor told him that he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. He had read the diagnosis and signed it, but he could not accept this fact anyway. The employee benefits of starring trade were very high. If he lost his ability to work due to work-related injuries, he would not only receive a higher retirement allowance, but his life for the rest of his life would also be guaranteed by starring trade. However, no amount of money could make him smile. He would rather not have the money and just exchange it for his health. But he also knew that this was impossible. With today's medical conditions, it was not enough to cure his injuries. The door of the ward opened, and a very unexpected person appeared at the door. Garrett tilted his head. Please forgive me for not being able to salute. It's a miracle that I can still joke with you now. Jiang Chen smiled and walked to the bedside. You can still joke. It seems that you have a good mentality. Garrett shook his head. No, this is not a joke. I'm telling the truth. I know. Jiang Chen nodded and looked at the flowers on the bedside table. Has your wife been here? Yes. Garrett replied. I'm really sorry for your injury. No, you don't have to apologize. Garrett shook his head. Thanks to the protection of the exoskeleton, I can still lie here in a daze. Looking at his legs, Jiang Chen pondered for a moment and suddenly spoke. Do you want revenge? Revenge? Yes, against the person who took your legs. Garrett smiled self-deprecatingly and shook his head. You're joking. I can't even get out of bed and walk now, let alone revenge. I have to rely on the nurse to help me eat later. What if I say, I have a way to help you stand up? Jiang Chen said with a smile. Garrett was stunned. He was about to say that this was impossible, but suddenly remembered his superior's other identity, chairman of the future group. For the name of the future group, it seems that nothing is impossible. Whether it is artificial intelligence, virtual reality or graphene, it has been questioned countless times by media experts, but it can always create miracles that make people dare not believe their eyes. If it is Jiang Chen's promise, maybe it can really work. Garrett swallowed his saliva and was about to speak. But I have to remind you that the operation has only a 10% success rate. We will replace your entire damaged spine with titanium alloy and then install special electronic neurons in it. I guarantee that even with anesthesia, this operation will be very painful. The success rate is actually 40%, but it is really painful. After all, it is a surgery on the nerves. Jiang Chen wanted to know his awareness, so he deliberately exaggerated the failure rate of the operation. Garrett took a deep breath. Jiang Chen originally thought he would be scared, but he didn't expect that he still had the energy to joke. Will I become Captain America? This question made Jiang Chen obviously stunned for a moment, and then laughed out loud. Of course not. Maybe you are stronger than him. Garrett agreed to undergo the operation, which was also within Jiang Chen's expectations. After the conversation, he signed the confidentiality agreement provided by Jiang Chen. No matter what the reason, the contents of the operation must not be disclosed, the ability must not be used for illegal acts, and the organization's command must be obeyed unconditionally. The doctor will implant a slave chip in his spine during the operation. If betrayal is confirmed, the slave chip will blow up the main control system of the spine, turning him back into a useless person. After the agreement is signed, he will be discharged from the hospital and transferred to the underground facility of Crescent Island, where he will undergo spinal nerve replacement surgery by the doctor responsible for the slave chip implantation surgery. Even though Jiang Chen got some of the relevant equipment for the operation from the end of the world, the mortality rate of the operation is still very high in terms of the medical level of the present world. However, on the way to the hospital, Garrett's expression was unusually calm. He would rather die on the operating table than lie in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Even if this means that from now on, he will wear a dog chain and do some dirty work for Jiang Chen, performing more dangerous tasks than before. Fortunately, the operation was very successful. The operation not only replaced his spine, but also replaced the bones of his limbs. Now, even without the help of a mechanical exoskeleton, he can still dent a steel plate with one punch and carry a car. The 6-inch graphene circuit board implanted in the posterior side of the skull integrates retinal imaging, radio life signal detection devices, drone control components, motion signal modems and other high-tech chips. To put it more intuitively, as long as he is given a rifle, and both sides do not consider battlefield support, it will be no pressure for him to fight a squad of US Marines alone, whether it is a street fight or a field battle. Just as Garrett completed the operation, Jiang Chen met Zhu Xianniao, who had regained consciousness, in the ward of Crescent Island. Seeing the person who came to visit the patient, Zhu Xianniao looked over unexpectedly. Jiang Chen? Do you know me? Jiang Chen looked at Zhu Xianniao in surprise, and asked with a smile. Who else in this world doesn't know you? Zhu Xianniao said with a weak smile. Drug lords also read newspapers? Jiang Chen teased. Without changing his expression, Zhu Xianniao laughed. It seems that nothing can be hidden from Mr. Jiang's eyes. The Hong Kong city government asked me about your name, and I told them that you were not on the list of survivors. Jiang Chen said with a smile. What do you need me to do? Zhu Xianniao closed his eyes and said very straightforwardly. Do you know this person? Jiang Chen took the tablet from the bodyguard next to him and threw it on Zhu Xianniao. Zhu Xianniao opened his eyes, glanced at the tablet, his face changed instantly, and squeezed out a few words from his clenched teeth. Even if I burn to ashes, I still know him. Tell me what you know. Jiang Chen said. It was he who tied me in the bathtub and turned on the faucet to drown me. Zhu Xianniao said hatefully. Reason? Zhu Xianniao hesitated, but still sighed and confessed honestly. We were discussing business on the deck at that time, and he proposed to buy 10 tons of salt from me. Salt. Jiang Chen frowned slightly. Bath salt, a drug extracted from Arabic tea. Zhu Xianniao looked at Jiang Chen, paused for a moment and then continued, but later I found out that he could only come up with 5 million yen, which was not even enough for a small amount, so the business failed. At this point, Zhu Xianniao's expression was as if he had seen a ghost. What happened next? Jiang Chen asked in a deep voice. Zhu Xianniao took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then, he took off his hat, and then he fell on the table. No breathing, no heartbeat, no pulse, just dead. Yes, I thought he was dead, but then something strange happened. What strange thing? It's definitely troublesome for someone to die on the ship, especially since I have a special identity. In order to avoid getting into trouble, I asked my 2 bodyguards to hold him, pretend that he was drunk, drag him to the stern and throw him into the sea. I returned to the room first. Zhu Xianniao's face became paler. In the room, I saw him sitting on a chair, still smiling at me. Hearing this, Jiang Chen fell into deep thought. As he expected, Tanaka was indeed still alive, and he didn't die so simply on the plane. And this virus leak was also his work. The problem lies in that hat. That hat is like some kind of switch. If you take it off, you will die. And the problem is here. Tanaka seems to have more than one life. But how did he do it? Jiang Chen frowned slightly. Chapter 704, Boiling Public Opinion. Then do you know what happened later? Jiang Chen asked. Zhu Xianniao looked at him blankly. Later? Later he shot me, and I passed out after being hit. When I woke up, I found myself soaking in the bathtub. It seems that Zhu Xianniao didn't know what happened on the cruise ship after he fell into a coma. For some reason, Tanaka released the T-virus, turning the entire cruise ship into a living hell. When Jiang Chen told him what happened afterwards, he didn't believe it at first, but when he saw the battle video Jiang Chen took out, his expression gradually changed from livid to fear. The one who kidnapped him was a demon who killed people without blinking an eye. And this demon, for some reason, set his eyes on the drugs in his hand. When Jiang Chen asked him what Tanaka asked him out of his mouth later, he was silent for a moment and gave 2 place names. Ethiopia, Somalia. Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows. Specific location? Give me the map, and I'll point it out for you. Zhu Xian'Yao stretched out his hand. Still using the tablet, Jiang Chen turned off Tanaka's portrait and called up Google Maps. Zhu Xian'Yao wiped his fingers on the screen a few times, locking the camera to the vicinity of the Gulf of Aden, then zoomed in on the border between Ethiopia and Somalia, and pointed out 2 locations. It's here. What's here? A tea plantation and a salt factory. Zhu Xian'Yao smiled, but the smile on his face was a little bitter. Saying this out loud is no different from giving up completely. The matter involves the T-virus, and he doesn't expect Jiang Chen or Interpol to show mercy to his industry. The industry he has painstakingly managed for more than 10 years in the Gulf of Aden was destroyed just like that. It is impossible to say that he doesn't feel any pain at all. I'm glad you can be honest about this. Your choice may have saved many lives. Jiang Chen took back the tablet and said casually when he stood up. Zhu Xian'Yao smiled self-deprecatingly and shook his head. Save people. He, ZHU, has caused so many people to be broken up and so many families to be separated that he himself can't count them. According to the data provided by the British Royal Caribbean Company, there were 3,121 passengers on board and 3,600 staff including waiters, crew members, etc. A total of 201 survivors were placed in Davao Port, Moro. In order to avoid causing panic, these people were temporarily controlled and were allowed to leave the country after a 1-week observation period. In fact, the survival time of the virus is very short, and ultraviolet rays can kill it. 3 days are enough to prove the safety of these survivors. The time was extended to 7 days just in case. On the day after the incident, the United Nations sent a commissioner to Mindanao for observation. Embassies of various countries also contacted the Moro government to confirm the list of survivors. Under pressure from the outside world to understand the inside story of the incident, Moro finally agreed to the media interview application after communicating with Starring Trade. Since the turmoil in Cagayan City, the T-virus has reappeared in people's vision. The tragedy of tens of thousands of people dying overnight made all the viewers shudder. Now, the tragedy on the Royal Caribbean cruise ship seems to tell people that the threat of the virus is not dead. BBC, CNN, CBS, Al Jazeera, a bunch of media rushed to Mindanao like bees smelling the fragrance of flowers. Fearless reporters carrying long guns, short guns and microphones swarmed to survivors, Moroccan officials, soldiers of the Starring Trade and anyone who might know. I was sitting next to the dance floor to rest, and the crowd in the dance floor suddenly became a mess. Not far away from me, a woman bit her male partner's face and refused to let go. We thought she was making out with her male partner at first, until she tore a piece of meat from his face. Got, woo woo woo. It's terrible. A woman with scars on her face said in tears. I was resting in my room because I had a stomach upset from eating seafood. Someone knocked on the door, so I went to open it. When I saw the fully armed soldiers, my first reaction was that Hollywood was making a movie and I was lucky enough to be a minor character. But when I saw the blood on the ground and the bodies behind them, I understood that this was not a joke. I'm a chef, and I happened to be getting something from the freezer. I was about to go out with the ingredients when I suddenly saw a riot outside. At first I thought I had encountered pirates, but later I found that the situation was much more serious than pirates. I turned around and ran into the warehouse, unplugged the power, and hid in the freezer. Maybe the zombies smelled something and ran in. Thank God, they can only push the door, not pull it. There was no sign at all, just like in The Walking Dead. The soulless man sat on the steps on the street, looking very tired, and drove away the reporters with a gesture to drive away flies. The superiors gave the order to shoot, so we shot. Please don't ask such stupid questions. They are not human, so I don't have any guilt. The soldier of Starring Trade who participated in the rescue operation said. The Philippines and Japan also received the rescue signal, but because they lost almost all of their naval forces at the beginning of the year, their Coast Guard ships were always in short supply. It was not until the people from Starring Trading completed the rescue and the cruise ship exploded due to the fire that their Coast Guard ships arrived at the scene. As for Japan, due to the distance, it arrived later than the Philippines. If we boarded the cruise ship first, we would not order the shooting of those Zangahem, those poor infected people. Absolutely not. We would use fishing nets to control them, and then put them in institutions such as mental hospitals. Before finding a solution, we would properly place these unfortunate people. In an interview with the media, the Prime Minister of Taiwan said righteously, trying to establish the image of a responsible major country in front of the international community. Mr. Taiwan, are you saying that for Japan, infected people are mentally ill, so they will be treated differently? Can I understand it this way? A black reporter who pays attention to human rights issues asked. Next question. Please let the reporter from Sankei Shimbun speak. Let's put the public opinion storm aside for now. Similar to the biochemical crisis that occurred in Cagayan City at the beginning of the year, future human biology once again made a disaster fortune because of the T-virus. According to the data feedback from the cooperative distributors and official online stores such as Amazon and Taobao, Jiang Chen can clearly see that the sales of T-virus vaccines and nutritional mixtures produced by future human biology have risen sharply for a week. In the information age, people around the world have long been influenced by countless disaster films, and all kinds of survival skills can be said to be easy to grasp. Everyone knows that when the end of the world comes, food, medicine, fuel, and weapons will be the key to survival. As a liquid food with a long shelf life and easy to store, nutritional mixtures are undoubtedly the best strategic reserve materials. Even if governments have repeatedly stated that the plot in the movie cannot happen in real life, the direct infection rate of this virus is not high, the survival time outside the body is short, and it will die quickly when exposed to ultraviolet rays. But this collective panic is obviously not something that can be dispelled by 3 or 2 statements, unless the culprit is sent to the guillotine. Just when the intelligence agencies of various countries joined forces and frantically searched for the source of the virus, Jiang Chen's ghost agent deployed in Japan took action before the CIA. Chapter 705 Overseas Operations. Baka. In the Defense Ministry's office in the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, Japan, Defense Minister Gen Nakatani angrily threw the document to the ground. What are those guys from Tequila Pharmaceutical doing? Didn't we ask them to be more restrained in the last meeting? The secretary stood at the door timidly, not daring to speak. After a while, Gen Nakatani vented his anger and took a few deep breaths. Go and call the chairman of Tequila Pharmaceutical for me. Yes. The secretary nodded and bowed, then turned and left quickly. At the same time, the Tequila Pharmaceutical building was in chaos. The tragedy on the Royal Caribbean cruise ship has once again caused the whole world to panic over the name of the T-virus. As early as half a year ago, the CIA had set its sights on the name of Tequila Pharmaceutical, but Tequila Pharmaceutical has always been very careful, and with the Defense Ministry's cover, even American agents could not collect any evidence. The board of directors of Tequila Pharmaceutical has repeatedly pressured President Hiroyuki Nomura to strictly restrict the actions of the Black Ship organization, including restricting the supply of raw materials, strictly reviewing funding applications, stationing inspectors in the laboratory for monitoring, etc. If the actions in Cagayan City are exposed, not only will Hiroshi Nomura's life be in danger, but all members of the board of directors may have to bear the charges of crimes against humanity and accept sanctions from the International Court of Justice. However, just last month, Tanaka suddenly disappeared on his way home from get off work. This scared the board of directors of Tequila Pharmaceutical. At first, they thought that he was arrested by the CIA and that the company's secrets had been exposed. Later, after inquiring, they learned that the CIA knew nothing about it. Fortunately, Hiroshi Nomura immediately ordered a secret search for the whereabouts of this man throughout Japan. Unexpectedly, in just 1 month, the missing Tanaka had already fled abroad and made a big news. Where is Tanaka? This is the 10th time Hiroshi Nomura has asked this question. Hasn't found him yet. The vice president said anxiously, I have contacted all the associations related to us and mobilized all the underground forces we can to search for his whereabouts, but a bunch of rubbish. Tanemura Hiroshi cursed, his fingers trembling as he touched his temples. From the day Tanaka disappeared, he realized that something might be wrong, but he didn't expect it to actually happen. Damn, where did that guy get the raw materials from? As the chairman of Tequila Pharmaceutical, Tanemura Hiroshi has certainly seen the synthesis formula of the T-virus. To produce 1 gram of virus concentrate, at least 1 kilogram of methcathinone is needed. The raw materials can be bath salts or Arabic tea, but no matter which one, it is a banned item among banned items. Tanemura Hiroshi's brows twisted together. President, what should we do now? The vice president said tremblingly. Delete all research data, and delete all relevant information about the black ship from the company's database. Tanemura Hiroshi ordered decisively. Tequila Pharmaceutical has been listed on the CIA suspect list. Now that such a tragedy has occurred, at least 27 Americans have died on the cruise ship. The CIA will no longer hesitate to use means, even if the Japanese government is interfering and intends to protect Tequila Pharmaceutical. The CIA will use special means to infiltrate the company. Since the secret can no longer be kept, it will be completely destroyed. Although this is a research result worth $500 million, it is nothing compared to this company with a market value of tens of billions of dollars. At this time, there was a sudden knock on the door. The two stopped talking, looked at each other, and Hiroshi Tanemura said, "Come in." It was Hiroshi Tanemura's secretary who came in. Hiroshi Tanemura frowned slightly and looked at the secretary and said, "Didn't I say that no matter what happens, don't come to me before I finish talking to the vice president?" "But it's a call from the Ministry of Defense," Hiroshi Tanemura asked with a sigh. "What did Minister Nakatani say?" "He told you to go to him after get off work," the secretary said timidly. "Where do we meet?" Hiroshi Tanemura asked in a deep voice. "Tokyo Metropolitan Hotel." It seemed to be a secret meeting in a hotel instead of a government building. Come to think of it, things related to the virus are certainly not suitable to be discussed in the office, especially at this sensitive moment. After get off work, Hiroshi Tanemura got into his Honda and drove towards the Tokyo Metropolitan Hotel. After passing 2 traffic lights and turning a corner, he slowed down. There seemed to be a traffic accident ahead, and the traffic jam was very serious. Hiroshi Tanemura glanced at his watch. It was almost the agreed time, and he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. He reached out and slapped the steering wheel twice, but the car in front still didn't respond. It can be seen that the traffic accident seems to be very serious, and there is no way to move in a short time. Hiroshi Tanemura sighed, took out his phone, and called the minister, but he didn't know whether he owed money or something, and the call couldn't be made. Hiroshi Tanemura, a mere president of Tequila Pharmaceutical, certainly didn't have the courage to stand up the Minister of Defense, so he hesitated, parked the car on the side of the road, walked across 2 streets, and stopped a taxi. "Go to Tokyo Metropolitan Hotel." "Okay," the driver replied in standard Japanese. The car drove smoothly, and Hiroshi Tanemura leaned back in the seat and loosened the tire around his neck. Through the rearview mirror inside the car, he saw the face of the female driver. She had a pretty face, and with the ponytail, she looked a bit pure. "Where are you from?" Tanemura asked in a casual tone. "Nagoya." "Nagoya, I heard there are a lot of beautiful women there." Tanemura teased. "Haha, sir, you are really good at joking." The female driver smiled politely. Seeing that the beauty seemed to be uninterested in him, Hiroshi Tanemura didn't care and directly revealed his name. "My name is Hiroshi Tanemura. If you often watch the news, you must have heard of my name." "So it's Mr. Tanemura." The female driver really showed a surprised expression. "I heard that you are the chairman of Tequila Pharmaceutical?" Very satisfied with the feeling of the beauty looking at him with new eyes, Hiroshi Tanemura smiled. He knows these people who come to Tokyo from other places to work too well, especially those female students who look like they have just graduated, living in a single apartment for 30,000 yen, sleeping on a tatami of several square meters, taking the Shinkansen for dozens of minutes every day to go to work in the city. Can't resist the temptation to take private jobs and shoot small movies. Especially such beautiful girls. Agents who are looking for actors will definitely not let them go. Can I know your name? Shironi Ino. Shironi Ino. Nice name. Hiroshi Tanimura smiled and said sincerely, if you have any inconvenience in your life, please contact me. This is my business card with my phone number and address. This address is of course not his own home, but the villa he bought in the Hichiji area. Hiroshi Tanimura put the business card in the box behind the gear shifter. Shironi Ino smiled and turned a corner with the steering wheel. Thank you. I think I can become good friends with Mr. Tanimura. Shironi Ino's words made Hiroshi Tanimura feel warm in his heart, thinking that there was a chance, so he chatted with this new female friend in a familiar way. Time passed quickly, but they had not yet arrived at the Tokyo Metropolitan Hotel. Hiroshi Tanimura took out his watch and looked at it. He saw that there were still 10 minutes to the agreed time. Looking at the gradually sparse buildings outside the window, he frowned slightly. Is this the direction to the Tokyo Metropolitan Hotel? The main road is congested, so I can only take the small road to go around. Shironi Ino said politely. Suddenly, Hiroshi Tanimura realized something was wrong, took out his phone, and opened the map, but did not receive a 4G signal. Please don't worry, Mr. Tanimura, stop the car. Now. Shinoshiro was stunned for a moment, then smiled. It seems that you can only sleep for a while. Hiroshi Tanimura cried out inwardly, and immediately reached out to the car door, ready to jump out of the car by force, but with a click, the door was locked. Just as he turned around, and was about to subdue the driver to stop the car, his eyes happened to meet an electric shock device. Please be honest, before we reach your destination. Crack, if nothing unexpected happens, there will be another explosion tomorrow. Brothers, please support me with monthly tickets. Chapter 706. Let's go directly. Takeda Pharmaceutical originally planned to hold a press conference at the end of the month to announce the launch of a new antiviral drug. However, on December 30th, the day before the press conference, Takeda Pharmaceutical suddenly announced that the press conference was temporarily cancelled. Mobilize all the people you can at all costs and find the whereabouts of Hiroshi Tanimura before the Americans. In the Defense Ministry office, Nakatani Gen roared into the phone. He waited almost until late at night yesterday, but Hiroshi Tanimura still did not show up. Even if there was a traffic jam, it couldn't be so long. The phone couldn't get through, so Nakatani Gen called Hiroshi Tanimura's home, and it was his wife who answered the phone. When asked if Hiroshi Tanimura had returned home, his wife said blankly that she didn't know. Realizing that something was wrong, Nakatani Gen immediately called the National Police Agency. That night, the entire Tokyo police were mobilized and frantically searched for Hiroshi Tanimura's whereabouts. The result is obvious, that the man has not been found until now. After hanging up the phone call from the National Police Agency fiercely, Nakatani Gen rubbed his temples tiredly. After this happened, he hadn't slept all night. Hiromu Tanimura had too much information. If this information was made public, Japan would be plunged into the most serious diplomatic crisis since World War II. Apart from anything else, the fact that the T-virus was researched under the authorization of the Japanese government was enough to make the Japanese Prime Minister step down. The hundreds of thousands of dead souls in Cagayan City, the tragedy on the Royal Caribbean cruise ship, these were not something that could be solved with a phrase like scientific research without other purposes, poor sample storage, or gomenace. With cold sweat dripping down his forehead, Nakatani Gen then picked up the phone and called Takeyama CG, the leader of the Yamaguchi Gumi. I'm honored that the Minister of Defense would personally call me, a commoner. Takeyama CG said with a smile. Don't talk nonsense, I need your help. Nakatani Gen said immediately. What favor? Takeyama CG asked slowly without asking for a reward. Help me find someone, the president of Takeda Pharmaceutical. His photo can be found online. His name is Hiroshi Tanimura. Nakatani said in a deep voice. What should we do after we find him? Nakatani hesitated for a moment and finally lowered his voice. Kill him. The whole of Japan, both the black and white worlds, were in turmoil because of Hiroshi Tanimura's disappearance. But at this critical moment, a tabloid in California far across the Pacific Ocean, suddenly revealed the secret of Hiroshita Nomura's disappearance. According to an insider, President Hiroshita Nomura disappeared on the way to a secret meeting with the Minister of Defense, and he was suspected of absconding for fear of crime. Absconding for fear of crime? What crime? When seeing this news, everyone was confused. For what purpose did the president of Tequila Pharmaceutical have a secret meeting with the Minister of Defense in a hotel? Why did the president of Tequila Pharmaceutical, who was in good financial condition and had a bright market prospect, abscond? People speculated whether there was another hidden story. If Tequila Pharmaceutical was originally only on the CIA suspect list, now the CIA has completely targeted this company. Hiromuto Nomura, whose whereabouts are unknown, was also honored to be on the list of key concerns of the two major intelligence agencies, the CIA and the FBI. But no one would have thought that Hiromuto Nomura had already been kidnapped by the ghost agent, taken out of Japan by water drop number 1, and detained in the interrogation room in the underground facility of Crescent Island. The news was released by the ghost agent at the instruction of Jiang Chen. On the one hand, it was to push Tequila Pharmaceutical to the forefront and attract the attention of intelligence agencies such as the CIA. On the other hand, it was to create opportunities for the ghost agent to take action again by disrupting the situation. Tequila Pharmaceutical is a Japanese company, and also a company that controls virus data. The server that stores virus data is of course impossible to connect to the outside world, and will inevitably be protected. After the incident, Tequila Pharmaceutical will most likely delete the data in the company's server, but it is impossible not to leave a backup. The T-virus itself was approved for research as a weapon project. The Japanese government will definitely not be willing to waste its investment, and will inevitably recycle and keep the experimental data. Nuclear weapons are very dangerous, but no country has ever been willing to give up this thing voluntarily. The same is true for the T-virus. If the United States gets this thing, the first reaction will definitely not be to destroy it, but to get it from the hands of the Sun country through the exchange of interests. This thing is more terrifying than nuclear weapons, and it does not carry radiation. The order that requires 10 nuclear bombs to destroy may only require a dozen kilograms, if replaced by the T-virus. This power to destroy the world must be completely buried, and no one can get it. When the Japanese government begins to transfer experimental data, the ghost agents deployed in Japan will take action again and destroy it at all costs. At this moment, in the interrogation room of the underground facility of Crescent Island, Nomura Hiromasa looked at the interrogator in front of him with a pale face. His expression was uglier than eating shit. He was originally prepared to fight to the end. However, these people have no intention of wasting time. Tied to a chair, the camera was set up, and then a truth serum was used directly. Hiroshita Nomura rolled his eyes and even vomited out the color of his wife's underwear. Hiroshita Nomura's testimony also confirmed Jiang Chen's guess. A large amount of methcathinone is needed to make the T-virus, and bath salts or Arabic tea are the raw materials that can extract methcathinone. At the same time, Tanaka disappeared a month ago, and when he disappeared, he took away experimental data and other information. The virus experiment was indeed approved by the Japanese government. 10 tons of salt. If he successfully took over ZHU Shianao's industry. Shit, that madman now has at least hundreds of tons. Standing behind Jiang Chen, Ivan couldn't help but swear. How many viruses can be made? Jiang Chen looked at Hiroshita Nomura's white eyes and asked in a deep voice. With his head drooping, Hiroshita Nomura continued in broken English. Not considering other materials, 10 tons of bath salts can turn half of North America into hell. Jiang Chen and Ivan looked at each other. They both saw the shock in each other's eyes. This kind of shock is no different from knowing that a madman is holding a weapon that destroys the world. And this madman is particularly unfriendly to the new country. Apply to the Ethiopian government. If Tanaka is in its territory, we need to arrest him immediately. Ivan immediately proposed. Ethiopia will not allow it. We are not familiar with them. At most, they will notify the US military. Jiang Chen said lightly. Is there any difference? Ivan asked. The combat effectiveness of the US military is not bad. As long as someone can kill the madman, it doesn't matter who goes. However, Jiang Chen doesn't think so. There is no difference. The owner of the virus has just changed his owner. Standing up, Jiang Chen squinted his eyes, staring at the dull face of Hiroshi in a mirror, and said in a cold tone, "The arrest operation will be carried out by ghost agents, and the starring Trade Navy and Air Force will provide support. What about entry permits? We don't apply, we go directly." Chapter 707 Good luck. Somalia, located at the mouth of the Gulf of Aden, is the only sea route for cargo ships from various countries to enter and exit the Suez Canal, and occupies the lifeline connecting Europe and Asia. Due to the continuous civil war, the production order has collapsed for many years. Since the 20th century, locals have been engaged in piracy. Chaos, poverty, and rampant arms make this a hotbed for terrorism. Occasionally, foreign tourists visit here and usually spend hundreds of dollars to hire local bodyguards. These bodyguards are usually pirates who have changed their professions. They know very well who not to provoke and where not to go. Although the price is not cheap, it is better than a ransom of millions of dollars. And there are exceptions to everything. In Beledweyne, just north of Mogadishu, a nation-faced man walked alone on the street in the slum. Under the shadows, a pair of malicious eyes were looking at him, and the travel bag on his shoulder with undisguised malice. But when he turned a corner and walked towards the house deep in the slum, all the malicious eyes were withdrawn. That was the base of the Shabab youth party. Stopping beside a relatively intact sand house, Tanaka took out his cell phone from his pocket, confirmed the coordinates, and walked towards the door. After pushing open the door, the originally noisy room gradually became quiet. The black man standing at the door had a rifle on his waist. He saw the hat on the head of the visitor and asked, "Are you Tanaka?" "Yes," Tanaka said with a smile. "Cell phone and weapons." The black man stretched out his hand. Tanaka obediently took out his cell phone and put it in the black man's hand. "And weapons?" The black man repeated in broken English. "I don't have any weapons on me." Tanaka spread out his hands. The black man looked at him in disbelief and reached out to search his pockets. However, apart from the passport and a few pieces of paper, he didn't touch any weapons, but only a small bottle of perfume the size of a thumb. "I advise you not to open it, otherwise you may kill yourself." Seeing that the black man was about to open it and smell it, Tanaka said with a smile in Arabic, and his tone didn't sound like a joke. There was a burst of laughter from the side, and it was obvious that no one took his warning seriously. The black man grinned cruelly and pulled off the bottle cap in front of the man. Just as he was about to put the thing into the nostrils of the Asian man, his whites of his eyes suddenly became bloodshot, and the life in his brown pupils gradually faded. His chest was heaving violently, and beads of sweat dripped from his nose and forehead to the ground. Tanaka took the bottle from him casually and covered it. The other people in the room looked at each other, not understanding the situation in front of them. A thin black boy walked up and slapped him hard with his hand a few times. Seeing that he didn't respond, he immediately pulled out a pistol from his waist and pointed it at Tanaka and said vigilantly, "What did you do to him?" Looking at the boy's actions, Tanaka smiled. "You will know soon." "Ah!" A scream came from behind, and a black man suddenly bit the neck of another black man and pressed him to the ground, with blood flowing all over the floor. This scene immediately frightened the companions nearby, and they all stepped forward to pull the two people who were wrestling apart. "Separate them quickly. Pry his arms apart. Quickly." "Ah! He bit me." This sudden scene also distracted the boy who pointed the gun at Tanaka, and he turned his head to look back. Roar. A short low roar sounded, and no one reacted. The boy standing in front of Tanaka was slammed against the wall by the black man, who had opened the bottle cap earlier, and half of his face was bitten off. "Ah, ah, ah. It hurts so much, battler. What are you doing? Stop it." The shrill howl gradually weakened, and blood splashed on Tanaka's trouser legs. The pistol slipped from the boy's hand, and fell into a pool of blood. It seemed that the black man smelled the smell of the same kind from the boy, and stopped gnawing, cast his scholar eyes on the other living people who were running around in the room, and then pounced on them. The gunshots finally rang out, and the man who was thrown to the ground randomly pulled the trigger of the AK-47 in his hand, and swept around the house. However, he didn't kill any zombies, but killed and injured many living people. The blood flowed back into a river in the dark room, dyeing the crawling ants red. Tanaka walked to the boy's side, picked up the pistol and the mobile phone that fell on the ground from beside him, smiled and stretched out his hand to rub the boy's prickly short hair. "Good boy, go quickly." The boy opened and closed his mouth, staring at Tanaka with terrifying eyes, but he didn't pounce on him. He slowly moved his eyes away and locked onto another living person. Devil. Passing under the table, a thin black man crawled towards the door in fear. However, he couldn't crawl to the door, and Tanaka raised his gun and aimed at the dark back. Bang! The man opened his eyes wide and fell in a pool of blood. The boy staggered, fell on him, opened his bloody mouth, and bit him hard. Tanaka found a stool and sat at the door of the room, watching the bloody scene with a smile. He had used up all his stock on the cruise ship, and the 5 milligrams in the perfume bottle here was the last bit. But he didn't feel bad. 2 months ago, he had developed an improved version of the virus. Now the infected will not only become zombies, but also evolve into mutants. The most important thing is that these modified zombies will not list him as a target for prey. These data came from more than 10 light years away, and all this was the will of the black ship. The inferior products used on the cruise ship should have been eliminated long ago. But it would be a pity to throw them away like this, so it would be better to give these poor bugs an appetizer first. With this idea in mind, Tanaka used all his stock on the cruise ship. Anyway, he will soon be able to get a steady supply of raw materials and extinguish the fire of civilization before the countries of the world react. The phone rang. Tanaka answered it and said with a smile, "You broke your promise and tried to test me with a boring trick. We have to make sure we are not dealing with the US military." The voice on the other end of the phone was gloomy. "It doesn't matter. I have plenty of time. How is it? Are you interested? Is this the T-virus?" The voice on the other end of the phone was a little excited. "If this virus is brought to New York and Washington, Shabab will undoubtedly become the most powerful and influential terrorist organization after the base. The whole world will lie dormant under their terror and listen to the teachings of the true God. Because it is an improved version, I plan to call it the TT virus." Tanaka chuckled. "How much do you plan to sell it for?" "I don't sell it for money." Tanaka shook his head. "Then what do you want?" "Do me a favor. There is a salt factory near Huda. That is Mr. ZHU's industry, right? Including his tea plantation in Ethiopia. Help me get it. I will give you half of the virus I extract. Deal." At the entrance of the hospital of the Crescent Island military base, Garrett hugged his wife and daughter, and then walked towards Jiang Chen, who was standing under the coconut tree. "Congratulations, Mr. Garrett." Looking at Garrett, Jiang Chen smiled and opened his arms and hugged him. After letting go of Jiang Chen, Garrett moved his neck and said teasingly, "Congratulations to you too, Mr. Jiang Chen. You have gained a loyal hound." Although he said so, Jiang Chen could clearly see the gratitude in his eyes. "Please don't belittle yourself like that. I never think of my men as hounds." Jiang Chen said with a smile, "How is your new body? How are you getting used to it?" "Very good. I feel like I've been reborn." Garrett punched his chest, making a solid muffled sound. "My muscle tissue is also much stronger than before. I feel like I can fight Captain America now. Chris Evans won't want to fight you. His abilities are in the movies." Jiang Chen smiled, then restrained his expression. "Enough of the jokes. Time is running out. Your first mission is here. Be ready to go at any time." Garrett stood at attention. "Very good. You have 3 days to get familiar with your body and practice some high-tech weapons. What about after 3 days? I need you to go to Somalia. Target? Drug enforcement. The opponent is a drug dealer. That's easy." Garrett whistled. Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head. "The opponent is the one who blew you up and crippled you, and the one who released the T-virus." Garrett was stunned for a moment, raised his eyebrows, and suddenly slammed his fists together, with a fierce grin twisted at the corner of his mouth. "Great, I must beat him so hard that even his mother can't recognize him. Find him, catch him, and kill him. If you can't catch him, if he resurrects, kill him again, until he can't move anymore. This is your mission briefing, and I have sent more details to your chip." Jiang Chen tapped the watch on his left hand. Garrett paused for a moment, and only he could see it. A stream of data flashed on his retina, unfolding in front of him into a 3-dimensional mission briefing. It was like wearing Google Glass, except that the SAR device was directly implanted in his cerebral cortex, not an external prop. Including the information about the T-virus, Tanaka's ability, and the secrets about the Black Ship. All the information collected by the ghost agents about the Black Ship organization was shared in the chip at the back of his brain. After browsing the mission briefing, Garrett looked at Jiang Chen solemnly. I will. Ghost will provide you with support, and Aurora 20 will also provide support when necessary. Good luck. Jiang Chen patted his shoulder and turned away. Sorry, I was busy yesterday and only wrote 3 chapters. I will publish them all tomorrow, Kak. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 708, Linling's Confusion. Garrett has already set off, along with the ghost agents. It is believed that good news will come from Somalia soon. The Black Ship organization has lost control. Tequila Pharmaceutical is caught in a whirlpool of public opinion, and the CIA's energy has been completely involved in the game with the Japanese government and the investigation of Tequila Pharmaceutical. In order to distance itself from the virus, the Japanese government has begun to secretly transfer the virus data and samples. At the same time, the ghost agents lurking in Japan have already set their sights on these data and virus samples. As soon as the transfer begins, they will immediately start to destroy these backup data and samples. In addition, Jiang Chen has a video recording of Hiroyuki Tanimura's confession of his crimes. If this video is made public, all conspiracies related to the T-virus will be exposed to the sun. The Japanese government will also be dragged into an irretrievable quagmire and condemned by the world for providing financial assistance and policy support to Tanaka. In order to prevent alerting the enemy and to let the United States receive the news in advance, the time for the release of the video was set after the destruction of the experimental data and virus samples. By then, this video will be uploaded to YouTube and other video sites by anonymous IP, making the crimes of the Japanese government public. Of course, Jiang Chen will selectively delete the part about the Black Ship organization. There is no point in making the temporarily invincible threat public, except to create panic. Moreover, the impact on Tanaka is very limited. He has taken away the virus data and the inventory in the laboratory, and released the virus on the cruise ship without regard for the consequences. Having done this, he obviously doesn't care whether the secrets of the Black Ship will be made public. The salt factory in Somalia is probably the last stop in his plan. If the raw materials there can be used to produce a virus that can cover the entire world, and then the local extremist organizations can be used as a medium to spread the virus to the whole world, the entire Earth civilization will be pushed to the brink of destruction. And the mission of the Black Ship organization will also come to an end. What exactly prompted him to make such a crazy decision suddenly? Jiang Chen is not sure yet, but he has reason to believe that it is most likely related to the natural selection. Could it be that I got the technology from the present world and aroused their vigilance? Thinking of this, Jiang Chen couldn't help but frowned. Graphene chip? Quantum communication satellite? Water treatment? Robot? What exactly is it? He had a hunch that the day of the decisive battle with the Black Ship organization was approaching. Before fighting with the Harmony camp, this sting lurking in the human body must be removed. Change body. Back to the end of the world, Jiang Chen found Linling and told her about Tanaka's situation, hoping to get an answer from her. You can understand it this way. As long as he takes off his hat, his body functions will stop, and then he will wake up from another body. Jiang Chen tried to describe Tanaka's situation in more detail. Linling frowned, holding the marker between her fingers and tapping the table randomly. Your description is too abstract. Can't you give me a sample or something? For example, that hat, or Tanaka's DNA or something like that. Recalling carefully, one was on the plane and the other was on the cruise ship. Every time Tanaka died, both the hat and the body were completely destroyed. Jiang Chen shook his head helplessly. This is difficult. Linling pouted and muttered softly. Electronic people can do it, and some special props can do it. To put it bluntly, you don't even know whether the other party's so-called fake body is a real person. What does this mean? Jiang Chen was stunned. It's very simple. Didn't you create a highly restored artificial person for the prince of a certain country in the real world? Using elementary artificial intelligence technology. Except for you and the prince, the two people who know about it, the princess in the eyes of others, isn't she just like a living person? Linling's words awakened the dreamer. Jiang Chen suddenly reacted. He only subconsciously regarded him as a person, but he didn't think about whether he was a person. You mean that Tanaka is an artificial person? Jiang Chen frowned. Well, I didn't say that. Linling shook her little head like a rattle, but considering that he never takes off his hat, the problem must be with the hat. Of course I know that. Jiang Chen smiled helplessly. So, smart Miss Linling, do you have any good ideas? Linling blushed. Obviously she didn't think of any good ideas, but she was unwilling to admit it frankly. Ahem. Anyway, you have to get me that hat first. Only after studying it can I draw a conclusion. Just then, there was a knock at the door, and then the door opened a crack, and Yao, wearing an apron on her chest, appeared at the door. Well, it's time for lunch. Let's get busy after lunch. As soon as she heard about the meal, Linling ran out of the door happily, leaving Jiang Chen behind. Looking at Linling's back, Jiang Chen shook his head with amusement, and followed her out. After the family enjoyed lunch harmoniously, Jiang Chen returned to the real world, but returned here again within 2 hours. As usual, he set up the teleportation point and replenished 300 tons of rice, potatoes, bacon, vegetables, salt, peppers and other foods to the warehouse in the backyard of the villa. The scale of food trade is getting bigger and bigger, and the population of Wanghei City is also increasing. Originally, it was transported once every quarter, but now it has to be transported once every month. Fortunately, there is the 4-dimensional teleportation device invented by Linling. Jiang Chen only needs to set up the teleportation point and stand on the real world to throw things here, so it didn't take him much time to move these 300 tons of goods. After sending a message to Wang Qing, asking her to transfer all the food to the base warehouse for storage, Jiang Chen returned to the villa, opened the refrigerator, and stuffed fresh food and various seafood into it. The food outside the villa is different from the food inside the villa. The former is wholesaled from Australia by the Future Group, while the latter is fresh food purchased from the market on Koro Island. After doing these things, Jiang Chen did not return to the real world immediately, but walked around the camp to relax. It was the end of December, and it was snowing heavily in the wasteland Wanghei City. The white fluffy snowflakes covered every inch of the land here, and under the sunlight, they exuded a crystal-like glitter like a gold border. Snowplows were working in the square, pushing the snow outside the base. Children ran through the open space, picking up snowballs and playing. The sentinels walked in formation with rifles, patrolling with the crawler drone. Along the way, everyone who saw him stopped what they were doing and saluted him. For the marshal who restored order in Wanghei City, the survivors living here respected him from the bottom of their hearts. As for those who saluted him, Jiang Chen just smiled in return, and did not disturb their work. To be honest, looking at the respect in these people's eyes really makes people feel elated. When passing by the rocket launch site, Jiang Chen suddenly remembered something, so he walked towards the direction of the Aerospace Science and Technology Research Institute. Chapter 709 Clouds over Somalia. In the present world, Somalia, Mogadishu, a man in a leather jacket carrying a suitcase walked out of the airport in a meteoric stride. He wore round-frame sunglasses on his high-nose bridge, and his sharp face looked quite tough. One could tell at a glance that this guy was not to be trifled with. Standing outside the airport, Garrett looked around the busy streets and reached out to press the headset. "This is Garrett. I have arrived at Mogadishu Airport." "Got it." Just like playing a video game, a blue road sign appeared directly in his field of vision, marking the mission location. "Shit, this thing is really convenient." Muttering to himself, Garrett locked his sight on the direction of the destination, walked through the crowd, and walked straight towards the blue road sign. He crossed a street and turned into a hotel run by locals. Instead of going to the front desk to book a room, he went straight upstairs. He stopped at the door of room 503 and gently pushed the door. The door opened. As the ghost said, the door was unlocked. Garrett walked in, his boots squeaking on the wooden floor. He carefully looked around, closed the door behind him, walked to the bed, and took out the room card from under the pillow. Everything was as described in the mission briefing. He grinned, then squatted down, and pulled out a password box from under the bed. He entered the password, and with a click, the box popped open, revealing the Ripper rifle with a black metallic luster, as well as orange-yellow bullets and magazines. He dumped his equipment on the bed, stuffed the rifle and drone into his travel bag, and put the pistol in his trouser pocket. After completing the arming, he carried the suitcase out again. When he walked downstairs, a black man in a grey shirt put out his cigarette and came forward. "Sir, do you need a bodyguard? For $400 a day, I can guarantee your safety in Somalia. Do you have a car?" Of course, in Somalia, a bodyguard is a driver. The black man smiled, showing his white teeth. Garrett nodded and waved his hand. "Take me to see your car." "Okay. My name is a bit long. You foreigners are not used to it. You can call me Nasheed Smith." Garrett said lightly. "Smith, this is the name on his passport." Nasheed's car was parked next to a fruit stand not far from the hotel, and there were a few children sitting next to it eating apples. After driving the children away, Nasheed opened the door and made a gesture to Garrett to invite him in. The modified Toyota pickup truck had traces of welding in the trailer behind the car. There is no doubt that this guy must have been a bandit in the past. If you want to ask why, it is because Toyota pickup trucks with .50 machine guns are almost standard equipment for terrorists. After playing hide and seek with terrorists in Iraq for more than 5 years, Garrett knows these things very well. But at this moment he said nothing, sat in the co-pilot seat, and fastened his seatbelt. "Where are you going?" The black driver started the car and asked with his head tilted. "Hoodle." Nasheed, who was about to drive, was obviously stunned. "What's wrong?" Garrett asked. "It's not peaceful there. I don't recommend you go there. It's the base of Shabab. You should have heard that they are not friendly to Americans," Nasheed said. Garrett grinned. "Just take me there and let me off." Nasheed made a helpless expression. "If you insist." Just as Nasheed got in the car, a woman wearing a black headscarf drove to the desert north of Huda. After parking the second-hand car next to a sand dune, the woman pulled off the camouflage headscarf and threw the pure black robe on the car, revealing her pretty face and the desert-colored combat uniform with optical invisibility that was originally covered. She went around the back of the car, pulled up the trunk, and took out the hidden ghost sniper rifle and drone backpack from it. Carrying the sniper rifle on her shoulder, she opened the holographic map, confirmed the coordinates of the target's alt factory and the contour lines of the surrounding terrain, and then walked towards the sand dunes next to her. The small drone terminal was placed behind the sand dune. She then activated the optical stealth and moved towards the top of the sand dune. Crawling on the sand, she set up the sniper rifle in her hand, and the crochets locked onto the salt factory hidden in the small village. The ghost bird is in place, waiting for attack instructions. In the laboratory of the salt factory, Tanaka connected the glass tube to the flask, filled with transparent liquid, and carefully introduced the azure reagent. At the moment, when the blue color merged into the transparent liquid, a chemical reaction suddenly flashed, and the originally incompatible blue liquid beads disappeared in an instant. The black man standing by and watching widened his eyes, looking at the scene in front of him in disbelief. "Have you learned it?" Tanaka asked with a smile. The black man put away his surprised look, pretended not to hear, and looked aside. "Don't be nervous. I know you were sent by the leader of Shabab to steal the skills. But you have to be careful when configuring this virus. If you are not careful, you may kill everyone." At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open, and a brown man walked in and said 2 words to Tanaka in Japanese. "I'm here." Tanaka's expression was a little surprised, but he quickly returned to normal, took the glass tube from the flask, and walked to another table. "You're here. It seems that Jiang Chen still surprised me. What should we do?" The brown man asked in a deep voice. "How many tons of bath salts have been transferred to the desert?" 97 tons. Tanaka nodded with satisfaction, picked up the test tube, poured a little unknown powder into it, and then poured the turbid liquid in the test tube into the flask, and pressed the cork. He raised the flask in front of the incandescent lamp, looked at the oily luster on the liquid surface, and smiled in confusion. "Very good, enough." He put the flask in the hand of the black chemist, patted his shoulder, and said in English with a smile, "You've seen it so many times, try it yourself." The black man looked at the flask in his hand, and looked at Tanaka at a loss. What should I do? Add the embryonic stem cell sample in the brown bottle over there to the flask, then place it in a culture dish and culture it at 37 deg point C for 2 hours. The last step of the virus is complete. I'm going to the bathroom and then have a meal. Don't worry, I've already completed all the dangerous steps. Go ahead and try it. You can do it. Leaving this sentence, Tanaka and the brown man walked out the door, leaving the black chemist with a bewildered look. Did you tell him the formula? Yes, he won't live long anyway, Tanaka said with a smile. In the village, where the salt factory is located, there are about 1,000 people, including the elderly, children, and women. 500 of them are directly or indirectly related to the drug business. With the help of Shabab, he took over Mr. ZHU's business without any effort, and now he is the boss here. So when he walked out of the salt factory, these ignorant natives looked at him with awe. They had no idea about the man, who was about to bring them death. Walking to the Toyota pickup parked at the gate, Tanaka opened the door, but did not get in. He looked up at the dazzling sun, his eyes narrowed into slits, and said softly, "The black ship has reached its final moment. Soon, the whole world will remember our name, be afraid of this name, and usher in the era of harmony as we blow the trumpet of doom. Sakta, will you choose to fight our enemies here, or follow me to the end? Is there a difference? No difference. Our destination is the same. Then I choose to fight here," the brown-skinned man said in a deep voice. A cloud obscured the gradually sinking sunlight. Tanaka nodded with a smile and patted his arm. Long-lasting military luck. Chapter 710. A glimpse of the distant sea. Pushing open the door, the north wind blew snowflakes all over the ground. Jiang Chen closed the door, hung his winter clothes on the wall, and walked into the Institute of Aerospace Science and Technology. Compared with the previous small workshop, the current Institute of Aerospace Science and Technology can undoubtedly be regarded as a decent one. A spacious lobby and a 5-story building. Although there is still a shortage of researchers, at least there is a lot more space. He went straight to Jiang Lin's laboratory and saw him and several researchers in white coats tinkering around a 2-person high oil barrel. Walking forward, Jiang Chen looked at the oil barrel-like thing for a moment and asked, "What is this?" "It's called Messenger, a space telescope belonging to the Pan-Asian Cooperation. It can observe primitive galaxies as far as 13.8 billion light-years away from the Earth and capture the light at the beginning of the Big Bang. It can directly observe galaxies within 1 to 50 light-years and take pictures of the general topography of the planet. It can also observe black holes, dark matter, etc." Putting the matter at hand aside, Jiang Lin explained to Jiang Chen. "Wow, where did you get this thing from?" Jiang Chen asked with interest, staring at it. "The Zhao group got it from the Taipei Space Launch Center. This space telescope was originally used to explore extraterrestrial civilizations, but before it was put into use, World War III broke out, so this thing was transported to the Taipei shelter. You asked me to collect all the equipment related to aerospace, so I bought it. How much?" 10,000 credit points. Jiang Lin shrugged. 10,000 credit points is a huge sum of money for ordinary people, but it is nothing for NAC. If it was placed in front of the station, the cost of this space telescope would be at least 10 billion Pan-Asia coins, but now, it is only worth more than 1,000 cans. Good quality and low price. You did a good job. Jiang Chen smiled, and then looked at the thing for a few more times. "How is it? Can it be repaired?" "This thing is not broken, it's just not finished yet. The survivors in Taipei sold us the design drawings and ground monitoring equipment. As long as we digest the technology, make the remaining parts, and then install them. Once this space telescope is completed and launched by Starring Trade, the mystery of natural selection and Gliese 581G will also be completely revealed by Starring Trade. Only when you can see where your enemy is with your own eyes can the Earth civilization be considered to have the possibility of fighting against it." After instructing Jiang Lin to complete the space telescope as soon as possible, Jiang Chen left the Institute of Aerospace Science and Technology. On the way to the community center, he happened to run into Wang Qing, who was looking for him. From her expression, it seems that she must be in a hurry. "What's the matter?" Jiang Chen stopped and looked at her and asked. Wang Qing nodded. There's a distress signal coming from Liuding Town. Liuding Town. As economic exchanges become closer, Liuding Town is still independent of the Order of Wanghei City led by NAC, but now it has become a vassal of NAC. The reason is simple. No matter how strong its air force and long-range firepower are, its foundation is on the sea after all, and many things are heavily dependent on imports from the survivor base on the shore. Think about it, what kind of industry can a place the size of an aircraft carrier support? More and more small and medium-sized survivor settlements are looking forward to the order in the area under the rule of NAC. As trade with the 6th block becomes closer, they simply take the initiative to apply to join the economic zone of NAC and accept the protection of the NAC military government, which can save a lot of tariffs and military expenses. This includes the beer bottle company that provides ammunition supplies to Liuding Town, and the harbor town that has close trade with Liuding Town, etc. As for these small and medium-sized survivor settlements, NAC gives them a high degree of autonomy. The only requirement is to abide by the constitution designated by NAC and pay taxes to NAC according to the charter. All the younger brothers joined NAC, so Liuding Town naturally became a younger brother of NAC. Although they were unwilling to accept this fact, after several internal meetings in Liuding Town, under the leadership of the capitalists headed by Tang Maya, Liuding Town and NAC signed a defense alliance agreement symbolizing friendship. NAC is of course obliged to respond to Liuding Town's distress signal. However, Jiang Chen did not expect that he would encounter such a thing when he came back temporarily. Who is the enemy? Jiang Chen looked at Wang Qing and asked. It's not sure whether it is an enemy. Wang Qing shook her head. A destroyer appeared near the Bohei aircraft carrier and has been hovering 5 kilometers away from the port of Wanghei City. Because it is not sure whether the other party is hostile, Liuding Town has been nervously responding these days. Destroyer? Jiang Chen frowned slightly. What worried him was not the destroyer, but the new force that appeared in the waters near Wanghei City. To have a destroyer, it must not be a small shrimp. Whether this destroyer was inherited from Xinqian or built by themselves, it was enough to prove that they were not easy to deal with. And what made him feel most incredible was that someone could sail freely in the dangerous deep sea. Jiang Chen had heard from Zhao Chenwu that the Zhao group had a small fleet, but basically they did not dare to leave the shallow sea and only dared to sail along the land. The monsters in the ocean were more than 100 times more terrifying than those on land. Apart from the extreme mutant creatures with polarization, the strongest on land is only the mother of Deathclaw, which is also prone to crawling in front of the Type 50 electromagnetic gun. In the ocean, both the upper and lower limits are unknown. After all, the number, density, and volume of the two species are not on the same order of magnitude. Apart from other things, a mutant blue whale is almost equivalent to the size of a Bohei aircraft carrier. Jiang Chen had seen photos of mutant blue whales, which were taken by Japanese merchants who went to sea. The size of the overwhelming blue whales really made it hard to think of what kind of weapons to defeat them. Has Liuding Town contacted the people on the destroyer? They tried to contact them, but the other party seemed to have a negative attitude towards dialogue, unwilling to engage in dialogue, just wandering near the open sea. It is obvious that Liuding Town will feel nervous. The distance between the two sides is too close, and any misjudgment may lead to accidental firing. When the destroyer on the opposite side fires a shot, the Bohei, whose engine has been broken for more than 20 years, can't even hide. What does Liuding Town mean? Jiang Chen asked. They want us to sign a joint defense agreement, Wang Qing said. Jiang Chen nodded, and after a moment's silence, he said, pull out a battalion of troops from the 1st Corps and deploy them on Hengsha Island. Send an engineering team to build artillery positions and fortifications on Hengsha Island. Leave this to Cheng Wei Go, who knows how to strike a balance. Hengsha Island is outside the jurisdiction of the NAC. There are 2 alien nests there. Should we send troops in directly? Wang Qing asked. Alien nests? It just so happens that the NAC's artillery hasn't had a military exercise for a long time. Let's fire 1,000 incendiary bombs to clean up the area and then enter the area. Jiang Chen waved his hand and gave the order. Yes. Wang Qing stood at attention and saluted, then took the order and left. Chapter 711 Black Ops. Somalia, Huda region, sunny weather. A large net has been stretched around the town, where the salt factory is located. Garrett, the modified warrior in charge of the frontal attack, the ghost agent who serves as support, and the starring marines deployed nearby to be on the safe side. All combat units have arrived at the designated positions. Just wait for dark to launch the general attack. The setting sun gradually slanted, and the dim halo enveloped the outer edge of the red soil slope, coating the surrounding sand dunes with a bit of blood color. The dark-skinned villagers held long branches and drove the goats back to the sheepfold. The truck drove past on the dirt road, raising a cloud of dust. Several militants carrying AK-47s jumped off the truck and arranged for the villagers next to them to unload the tea on the truck and pull it into the drug factory. The ghost agent, crawling on the sand dune, took a deep breath, moved his eyes away from the scope, and reached out to tap the touchscreen on his right arm several times. In order to prevent snipers from spying, these militants cleverly pulled ropes between the buildings and hung dyed cloth strips on the ropes. However, for the high-tech ghost agents, these folk methods are not so effective. The only trouble is the civilians in the village. It is difficult to avoid accidental injuries. The holographic screen appeared, showing her an aerial view of the village. The drone has arrived above the salt factory, using infrared recognition devices to mark the heat source belonging to the militants, and using the two-line positioning method to directly present the three-dimensional position of the target on the ghost agent's retina. The sky finally darkened, except for the militants, who were still on guard. The villagers had returned to their homes, closed the doors and windows, and the whole village was shrouded in a silent darkness. When the last ray of light went out, Garrett, who was waiting by the road, took out the Ripper rifle from his travel bag, loaded it neatly, and then walked towards the wall on the side of the village with the rifle. The agent, codenamed Ghostbird, has shared the heat source coordinates of the enemy unit into his chip. Although their skin color was naturally camouflaged under the surveillance of the drone, these armed elements hiding in the dark were no different from those standing under the spotlight. There are 2 sentinels at 3 o'clock. Garrett pressed the headset while leaning against the wall. Can you hit them from there? There's a residential building between us. You can only rely on yourself. Okay. As the voice fell, Garrett took out the drone from the backpack on his back and threw it into the air like a frisbee. Buzz. A short buzzing sound whizzed past, and before the 2 sentinels on duty could react, a series of blood beads splashed from their bodies, and they fell weakly into the pool of blood. Holding a rifle, Garrett walked out of the shadows, reached out to pick up the hummingbird drone hovering above the 2 bodies, and then rushed towards the salt factory with the rifle. But at this moment, a shrill scream suddenly broke the silence of the village. Then, on the other side of the village, gunshots rang out like beans. Garrett's face was startled, thinking that his whereabouts had been exposed. He immediately rushed to the shelter on the trail, set up his rifle, and switched to automatic gear. The screams woke up the sleeping villagers, and the lights came on in 2s and 3s. Of course, some people will never wake up again. The lights that came on one after another illuminated the dark village, and the cries, screams, and gunshots came one after another. Garrett waited for a long time, but the expected siege did not come. Something is wrong. The voice of the ghost bird sounded in his ears. What happened? Can you see it over there? Garrett frowned and asked. It's zombies. The villagers have been infected and turned into zombies. The zombies began to attack the militants, and they are killing each other. Fuck. This lunatic. Garrett cursed inwardly, immediately picked up his rifle, and rushed towards the direction of the salt factory. This operation was not applied to the Somali authorities, and at this moment, the whole village has become zombies. Such a big case is absolutely impossible to suppress. Such heavy casualties of unrelated personnel will inevitably attract the attention of local warlords, international observation organizations, and the US military stationed in the Gulf of Aden. Starring trade must not bear this blame. We can only make a quick decision. Roar. The man with blood stains on his dark skin and a ferocious face rushed out of the darkness and pounced on Garrett fiercely. Judging from the fierce light in his face and his agile skills, he is obviously not an ordinary zombie. Garrett did not dodge and stretched out a hand like lightning, holding the zombie's neck, and then squeezed it hard. With a click, the zombie's neck was broken, and the bloodthirstiness in his pupils gradually faded. Without stopping, Garrett set up his rifle and continued to run wildly towards the salt factory. Gunshots rang out in the distance, and the bullets shot through the zombies that were about to attack Garrett from the side. The terrain of the alley was too narrow, and the long range of the rifle was difficult to play in close combat. Although they came to destroy the virus, they didn't expect to encounter zombies here. Damn it. I should have brought a spray gun. Blood splashed on Garrett's face. He pulled out the dagger stuck in the zombie's eye and cursed fiercely on the communication screen. Shit. These zombies are not right. They seem to have mutated. You'd better hurry up. The riots here have alarmed the local armed forces. We didn't apply for entry, and they may not be very friendly. I know. He knocked down the zombies that rushed over with a rifle butt. Garrett raised his rifle and swept down 7 or 8 zombies. He smashed open the wooden door and rushed into a house. A zombie was lying on the ground, gnawing on a corpse. Before it could react, he rushed to the backyard, took a deep breath, and kicked the sand wall hard. Driven by titanium alloy skeleton, the built-in power module runs at maximum power. The kick was solid, and with a bang, the entire sand wall fell backwards, burying the 2 zombies behind the wall directly into the ground. Because the commotion led the zombies to the street he was just on, there were few zombies on this street. The salt factory is in front, Garrett said while running. Ghost, the local armed forces have discovered the situation here. Yes, from the satellite image, you only have 15 minutes. Enough. The gunfire in the drug factory has stopped. From the heat source information from the drone, it is obvious that the zombies have won. Shabab, who traded with the devil for victory, was finally bitten off a piece of meat by the devil. The Black Ship organization has never had any allies, and all humans who refuse to accept evolution are their mortal enemies. Rushing into the drug factory, dozens of zombies with rifles hanging on their waists staggered towards Garrett. Orange-red flames jumped from the muzzle. Garrett pulled the trigger and instantly shot the heads of the zombies. Click. The magazine was empty. Garrett took out a new magazine from his waist and was about to replace it. But at this moment, suddenly, a strong wind hit from the side. Garrett, whose 5 senses were strengthened, reacted immediately and put the rifle on his chest. Boom. The tempered plastic gun body was directly blasted into 2 pieces by this blow. Throwing away the rifle that was broken into 2 pieces, Garrett took advantage of the momentum and jumped back, distanced himself from the man, and locked his eyes on him. Who? The brown-skinned man shook his arms and took a starting position, and the muscles of his whole body swelled at an incredible rate. It doesn't matter who it is. The originally peaceful eyes suddenly flashed with the ferocity of an eagle. You just need to know that today, you will die here. As a starring trade soldier. Are you sure? Garrett's mouth curled up a grim smile. Chapter 712 Tokyo Ghoul. On the bustling streets of Tokyo, a black van drove out of the underground garage 2 blocks away from the Tequila Pharmaceutical building. According to the intelligence collected by the ghost agent, today, the Ministry of Defense will take the lead in transferring the T-virus data in Tequila Pharmaceutical's hands. In order to ensure that everything is foolproof, not only the intelligence headquarters of the Japanese Defense Agency participated in the transfer operation, but also the Cabinet Intelligence Research Office, which directly reports to the Prime Minister, and the 2nd Department of the Ground Self-Defense Force. However, when the day of the transfer came, their lineup was unexpectedly low-key. In addition to the black van, all the energy of the Japanese intelligence agencies was used to divert the attention of the CIA. The president of Tequila Pharmaceutical, Hiroshi Tanimura, disappeared, and the Minister of Defense has already put the blame on the Americans. In his opinion, no one else except the CIA has the ability to kidnap Hiroshi Tanimura out of Japan without anyone noticing. The news about Hiroshi Tanimura's disappearance, which they tried their best to cover up, was first leaked from a newspaper in California thousands of kilometers away, which provided evidence for Nakatani-gen speculation. However, the Japanese government did not realize that there was someone else targeting them. At the same time as the black van drove out of the garage, a white car parked at the door of a clothing store 200 meters away from the van also moved slowly. The target has left the garage. Received. After ending the communication, Zenibe glanced at the screen on his right arm and confirmed the location of the black van through the picture sent by the drone and slowly kept a distance of 300 meters from it. Now it is in the city center, so it is not convenient to take action. Just wait until the car drives to the target street. Zinaibe's mouth curled up a smile. By the way, Zinaibe is just the name on her passport. Her real name is ZHUU, from Michigan. She has helped Jiang Chen many times and is considered one of the more experienced agents among the ghost agents. To ensure that everything was foolproof, Jiang Chen dropped her off in Japan after the cruise ship incident to plan an operation against Tequila Pharmaceutical. The red light came on, and ZHUU stopped the car. The black van continued to drive towards the ambush location, but she was not in a hurry, because from beginning to end, the van did not get rid of the drone's surveillance. But at this moment, something strange happened. A Mercedes-Benz car coming from the opposite direction suddenly turned the steering wheel, broke into the reverse lane, and crashed into the black van without warning. Caught off guard, no one reacted. The Mercedes-Benz was obviously modified, and it actually knocked the black van over. The crowd screamed and fled, but hell had just begun. Boom. Flames jumped out of the car, instantly engulfing the black van and the crowd nearby. Flying debris knocked down the fleeing passers-by, and blood and broken limbs were spilled on the street. Vehicles that brake suddenly collided with each other, and vehicles that had no time to avoid the explosion crashed into shops beside the road. The sudden explosion completely paralyzed the traffic on this road. ZHUU, who was waiting for the traffic light, stared blankly at the fire on the screen and was stunned for a moment. Soon, she reacted and input the return command to the drone, and at the same time, ordered her companions who were ambushing at the predetermined location. The target has been destroyed. The mission is cancelled. I don't know who got ahead of them and blew the virus data and samples into pieces. Is it the CIA? No, they should not want to destroy the virus, but to get the virus. But who could it be? ZHUU frowned and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, a shrill scream outside the car window woke her up. Yes, it's zombies. You're kidding. How could this be possible? How could this thing appear in Tokyo? Run. Drive. 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 The noisy Japanese and the sound of car horns came one after another. The traffic accident near the intersection completely paralyzed the entire block. The sudden outbreak of the T-virus made everything fall into even more terrifying chaos. This is not a comic, nor a movie. The bloody zombies staggered through the stagnant traffic, using their painless hands to chisel open the car windows, throw the fleeing people to the ground, and bite all the flesh and blood they could see, expanding their army of zombies in fear. Witnessing the blood in front of him, ZHUU suddenly remembered. There was not only virus data in the car, but also the latest improved virus sample developed by Tanaka. There was no time to waste. Staying in the car now would be tantamount to waiting for death. ZHUU immediately pushed the car door and got out, running along the crowd away from the source of infection. At this moment, a familiar face suddenly appeared on the big screen beside the street. A face with a very happy expression, and that iconic peaked cap. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanaka. Thousands of kilometers away in Somalia, in the salt factory, Garrett and Sakta were facing each other. Looking at the starting posture of the man in front of him, Garrett narrowed his eyes slightly. Muay Thai. Sakta did not speak, but responded with his fist. Whoosh, the sound of breaking through the air rang in his ears. The iron fist, that seemed to be able to drill through the steel plate, made Garrett's expression suddenly stern, and he put away all his contempt. There was another sound of breaking through the air. Sadik skillfully threw a fist and hit Garrett in the face with a fierce elbow. Bang. A dull sound, a drop of cold sweat, and Sadik's pupils gradually dilated. His elbow seemed to hit an iron plate. No, if it was an iron plate, he would have the confidence to penetrate it after undergoing genetic modification. However, at this moment, it was lightly blocked by the arm of the man in front of him. Not only that, judging from the piercing pain, his right hand should be disabled. It seems that not only he has mutated, but the man in front of him has also undergone some degree of mutation. And it is a more terrible transformation. Don't be surprised, my bones are titanium alloy. Garrett grinned and punched him in the face fiercely, hitting his nose directly into a dent, and breaking his entire cheekbone into several pieces. Take the punch for that guy named Tanaka first. When you get down, thank him for me. Throwing the dead Sakta aside, Garrett opened the holographic map and walked towards the target location without delay. Pushing open the wooden door, he came to the basement of the salt factory. The virus density here is very high, but for him who has been injected with genetic drugs, no matter how high the density of the virus is, it will not work on him. After dealing with the black zombies that rushed over, Garrett walked straight to the source of infection. The source of infection is a culture dish, where the virus leaked. There are dozens of pockets of bath salts next to it, and a box of glass bottles filled with dangerous liquids next to the table. All the viruses are here. Only 11 kilograms. How is it possible? Garrett gritted his teeth and immediately released the drone, but he searched the entire salt factory and did not find Tanaka and more viruses. There is only one possibility. The Black Ship organization has transferred all the raw materials and newly made viruses. Garrett punched the wall with a fist, making a dent in the concrete wall. Fuck. At this time, the voice of the ghost bird sounded in my ears. The local armed forces are only 5 kilometers away from the salt factory. We must evacuate immediately. Got it. Garrett turned off the microphone, looked back at the salt factory unwillingly, picked up the broken Ripper rifle from the ground, and evacuated outside the salt factory. The 5th update is handed in, rolling on the ground to ask for votes. Chapter 713 Chaos. Aisha called Jiang Chen back to the world through the 4-dimensional messaging device on the app. He never thought that, after being away for such a short while, earth-shaking changes would happen outside. First, the ghost agent sent news from Japan. The T-virus broke out in Tokyo, Japan, and the entire Shinagawa district was urgently quarantined, and more than 100,000 people were infected and turned into zombies. The ground self-defense force urgently deployed 5,000 combat units to Tokyo. At the same time, the US military stationed in Japan also urgently dispatched 5 Osprey helicopters and airdropped a company of Marines to Shinagawa district to carry out rescue operations. It was also during this incident that Tanaka's face appeared on the LED big screen in Ginza, Tokyo, and appeared in the public eye for the first time. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanaka. You may be unfamiliar with my name, but it doesn't matter. You must have heard of the virus I developed. You don't have to try to understand my motive for doing this. If you have to dig deep, it's probably war. Yes, it's war. Human civilization will usher in a dawn without hypocrisy and sin. Let's look forward to the day when the black ships arrive. Good luck to you. Although Tanaka called his actions war, the world media still characterized the attack as a terrorist attack and called it the Asian version of 9/11. Although the self-defense forces and the US military stationed in Japan controlled the situation at the first time, used barbed wire to pull up isolation belts and evacuate the survivors in the isolation area. But the number of casualties of hundreds of thousands still cast a shadow on this country and even the whole world. Similar incidents have happened before. In March 1995, a Japanese cult organization released sarin gas in the Tokyo subway, causing a large number of casualties. However, compared with the number of casualties in this T-virus leak, the incident in 1995 can only be regarded as pediatrics. We express our deepest condolences for the crisis in Japan. We strongly condemn the use of biological and chemical weapons against unarmed civilians. This is a global disaster. Regarding the 9 citizens who died in the virus incident, our SEALs will give you an explanation. The Kremlin has issued a nationwide arrest warrant if Tanaka or the Black Ship appears in Russia, France. However, on the 3rd day after the T-virus incident in Tokyo, the small town north of Huda in Somalia attracted the attention of the world. Overnight, 987 villagers and 45 militants all died. The cause of death was the T-virus. No, to be precise, it was a modified version of the T-virus. After hearing the gunshots and explosions, the local armed forces immediately sent troops to the target village. However, this group of rabble obviously underestimated the combat effectiveness of the zombies and drove Toyota pickup trucks directly with machine guns and crashed in. If it were ordinary zombies, perhaps a dozen guns could easily suppress them, but these zombies were mixed with mutants. Especially a zombie whose muscles swelled like tumors, knocked over a pickup truck from the side, and the militiamen realized that their careless behavior had stirred up a hornet's nest. The 30 militiamen who rushed into the village delivered food, and the warlord who controlled the Beledweyne area immediately sent a regiment of troops to block the desert area north of Huda, set up checkpoints from a distance, and send soldiers to evacuate the villagers in the area. However, their efficiency was obviously not very good. Within 2 days, the zombies that spread to the neighboring areas turned at least 5 villages with a population of thousands into a place of living dead. But the trouble is that the village where the virus broke out is located on the border between Somalia and Ethiopia, and it is a disputed border with a dotted line on the map. Because of the chaotic political situation in Somalia, the Bedouin warlord did not ask the United Nations for help in the first year, but foolishly chose to block the news, which pitted neighboring Ethiopia. It was not until the 3rd day after the incident that Ethiopia received news from the town on its side that strange people had crossed the border from Somalia and would bite people if they disagreed with someone. Fortunately, the Ethiopian military dispatched a division of troops at the first time and even used armored vehicles and tanks to keep these zombies out of the border. At the same time, Ethiopia asked the United Nations for help. It was precisely because of this that, although the T-virus broke out at the same time as Tokyo, the virus incident in Somalia was not known to the public until 3 days later. Crescent Island, starring Trade Military Base. Garrett stood in front of Jiang Chen's desk. His expression was both awkward and a little uneasy. The ghost agent standing next to him, codenamed Ghost Bird, whose real name was Bernus, was also a senior agent. However, the operation went wrong. What exactly happened in Somalia? Garrett, you go first. Jiang Chen tapped his fingers on the table, his face looking very bad. We have made a plan to capture him, but Tanaka is not in the salt factory, and we only found 11 kilograms of T-virus in the salt factory. Garrett stood at attention and said. Jiang Chen looked at Bernus. Bernus looked a little embarrassed, because the intelligence was collected by the ghost agents. They did receive reliable information from their informants. Tanaka stayed in the salt factory for several days, and at least 3 trucks drove into the village every day to unload the tea smuggled from Ethiopia. But on the day of the operation, Tanaka was gone. Also missing were the materials for cultivating the virus and the virus that Tanaka had prepared in the past few days. Sorry. Hundreds of kilograms of virus extract are missing, and nearly 100 tons of virus raw materials are missing. Do you think I want to hear your apology now? Jiang Chen stared into Bernus's eyes and took a deep breath, but did not continue to embarrass her. At this moment, Jiang Chen's watch vibrated. He had previously instructed Jane to keep an eye on the news about the T-virus on the internet at any time. Now he was looking for him, probably just for this matter. You go down first. Jiang Chen waved his hand and said, yes. Garrett and Bernus breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, looked at each other, and retreated. After the office door was closed, Jiang Chen pressed a button on his watch, and Jane's holographic image appeared beside him. There is new news. What news? The warlords in the Bedouin region refused to implement the request signed by the Somali authorities for the US military to take over the infected area, and threatened that, if the US military forcibly entered the Bedouin region, all checkpoints set up outside the infected area would be removed, allowing the zombies to spread throughout Somalia. Well, that fool is playing with fire. And then what? Not everyone has the capital to use the virus as a bargaining chip. The warlords in the Bedouin region obviously overestimated their combat effectiveness. Dare to be so presumptuous after the Tokyo incident. This is simply to make enemies with the whole world. And Jane's next words did confirm Jiang Chen's guess. 2 hours ago, the United Nations passed a war resolution. 6 F-18 Hornets took off from the US military base in the Gulf of Aden, and 12 Osprey transport planes were also in action. Chapter 714, Somalia War. The United Nations approved NATO's military deployment to Somalia, with 3 votes in favor and 2 abstentions. The Somali authorities accepted the resolution and expressed their willingness to cooperate with NATO's military operations. The Bedouin warlord and the leader of the Youth Party both issued statements, calling the Somali authorities' actions shameless betrayal, and that they would carry out this resistance war to the end. At the same time, the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and other countries declared war on the Bedouin warlord, and Ethiopia authorized military access to NATO. Such a quick response can't help but remind people of the 2001 Afghanistan war. Perhaps it was out of revenge for the Allies, perhaps because of the horrific death rate of the T-virus, or perhaps because from the beginning, this was a war involving all mankind. Any organization that provides shelter to Tanaka will be uprooted, no matter how much it costs. The two sides participated in the war with more than 200,000 troops. NATO and the Somali government forces invested a total of 90,000 people, while the Beledweyne warlord mobilized 150,000 people. The first round of fighting broke out in the northeast of the capital Mogadishu. The battle situation is also obvious. With the support of the US Air Force Base in Djibouti, thousands of Tomahawk missiles almost paralyzed all the armored units of the Beledweyne warlord. NATO ground forces rely on mechanized armor to cooperate with ground forces to advance towards Beledweyne. However, the battle situation is not as easy as the United States imagined. The Beledweyne warlord, who is proficient in guerrilla tactics, relies on Toyota pickup trucks and standard 107 rocket launchers to raid M101 main battle tanks at close range at an incredible speed, causing considerable trouble to US armored units and soldiers. At the same time, the Beledweyne warlord is supported by organizations such as the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and has been extremely tenacious in the battle. Perhaps these natives will eventually lose, but it may take until next month for this war to be over. The T-virus incident may trigger an economic depression in Asia, and the Japanese property market will usher in the biggest drop since the 1990s. Jiang Chen put down the newspaper in his hand, sighed, and after a moment of silence, he spoke to Jane. Please contact Sun for me and prepare 5 billion working capital from the group. I want to acquire Tokyo real estate. The economic crisis in Japan is inevitable, and the opportunity to buy at the bottom is coming soon. Okay, Mr. Chairman. But is it time to consider this now? Jiang asked. You don't understand. Humans are economic animals. Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head, saying something that made the artificial intelligence unclear. 2 days have passed since he came back, and 5 days have passed since the Tokyo T-virus incident. The United Nations suddenly approved NATO's military action against the Beledweyne warlord, which has turned the situation in Somalia into a mess. However, the key figure Tanaka is still missing. Ghost Agent analyzed the images taken by the Sky IX-1 spy satellite and finally determined that Tanaka left Somalia on the convoy returning to the Ethiopian tea plantation on the day of the attack. However, because everyone was wearing a headscarf and their facial features could not be distinguished, the investigation was in trouble for a while. But at this time, the informant that Ghost Agent spent a lot of money to cultivate in Shabab played a key role again. According to intelligence, Shabab Youth Party has recently begun to transfer personnel and equipment to the Mandara region of Kenya. Mandara is located at the junction of Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia, and religious forces are complicated. Next time you contact your informant, please ask me what their leader's brain is like. Throwing the intelligence in his hand on the table, Jiang Chen's brows finally relaxed a little. Berners shrugged and reported to Jiang Chen in a helpless tone. They believe that, as long as they master the T-virus that Western countries fear, it is equivalent to mastering nuclear weapons, and they can be on an equal footing with the mainstream countries in the world, and realize their political demands through negotiations. So after the deal with Tanaka, Shabab, a terrorist organization that was originally marginalized, immediately received attention and assistance from IS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban. Until now, they still hope that Tanaka can help them win this war. They are dreaming. Jiang Chen snorted. Apart from anything else, countries purchase a large number of antiviral vaccines from Future Human Biology every month. Poor Africans may not be immune to vaccines. What about us? Go kick them awake. Taking a document from the desk, Jiang Chen quickly signed his name and threw it into Bernas's arms. Last chance. We only have one chance. Destroy the virus and destroy the black ship. Staring into her emerald green eyes, Jiang Chen said word by word. Jiang Chen's gaze made Berners feel a little suffocated, but she still stood at attention. Understood. Then go quickly. Jiang Chen waved his hand, signaling Berners to leave. He left the office with the document in his arms, and Berners closed the door. The office was empty again. Jiang Chen took a deep breath and rubbed his brows with his hand. Jane, do you have any good ideas? Jane's holographic image appeared beside him, looking at Jiang Chen expressionlessly. Ask, what is the good idea? Kill Tanaka, Jiang Chen said. Jiang was silent for 2 seconds, then spoke. Is it difficult? He is as cunning as a rat, and harder to kill than a cockroach. We don't even know how many times he can be resurrected. What does he want? Jiang asked. Destroy the world? How can he destroy the world with just one person? The T-virus in his hand, and the black ships that are advising him more than 10 light years away. Then destroy all the viruses, and cut off their connection with the black ships. Jiang's answer was very abstract. Destroy all the viruses? It's not that simple. All he can do now is to follow the black ships. Wherever they open a drug factory, the soldiers of starring trade will go there. Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head, but at this moment, he was suddenly stunned. Wait, destroy the virus. He suddenly thought of an idea. Although it was a bit ridiculous, it seemed feasible. NATO's military action disrupted the situation in Somalia, which was bound to have an impact on starring trade's actions. On the other hand, the chaotic situation also provided starring trade with the conditions to fish in troubled waters, to launch a second military operation. On December 31st, NATO forces and the Beledweyne warlords exchanged fire in the suburbs of Beledweyne, which is the gateway to Beledweyne. Beledweyne suddenly announced that it would remove all checkpoints in the infected area and release thousands of infected people. Condemnation was meaningless. The Ethiopian army suddenly announced its participation in the war. Tanks and infantry crossed the border and took over the defense of the infected area. Beledweyne warlords were attacked from all sides, and their demise was only a matter of tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. At the same time, Garrett, Ghost Agent, and 12 starring Marines arrived in Kenya one after another, along with their equipment. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 715 Arrival in Japan. This was Jiang Chen's first visit to Japan. When he got off the private plane, he could clearly see the desolation of Tokyo from the airport. It was hard to imagine that there were only a few people in such a large international airport. A motorcade was waiting at the airport gate. The people who came to pick him up were the Future Group's branch in Japan and officials from the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry of Japan. It seems a bit ambiguous to abbreviate the name of this department using Chinese grammar, so I'll mention its full name here, the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, which is probably similar to the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Trade and Economic Cooperation of China. Welcome, Mr. Jiang Chen. I'm Takagi Yosuke. Please give me your advice. Having served as an ambassador to China, Takagi Yosuke speaks fluent Chinese and is very respectful to Jiang Chen. However, the Japanese have this attitude towards everyone, and Jiang Chen can't tell whether he is sincere or has ulterior motives. Hello, Mr. Takagi. Jiang Chen shook his hand politely. After a brief greeting, Jiang Chen learned his identity. This guy is surprisingly not small. He is actually the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry. Sitting in the car sent by the branch office to pick him up, Gao Muayaji followed him and very familiarly. In the car, he chatted with Jiang Chen and inquired about Jiang Chen's purpose of this trip. Mr. Jiang Chen, forgive me for being blunt, the situation in Tokyo is very chaotic now. It is really not a good time to travel. Haha, Mr. Gao Mu, you are joking. Jiang Chen laughed and did not respond to Gao Muayaji's temptation. Instead, he smiled and changed the subject. I wonder where is more fun in your country? Gao Muayaji was stunned for a moment, but soon returned to normal and smiled. If you plan to go sightseeing, I recommend Mount Fuji. Jiang Chen certainly did not come for sightseeing. As Gao Muayaji said, there was nothing to see in Japan at this time. There were few vehicles on the street. Except for the traffic lights, the car that Jiang Chen and his group were sitting in did not stop. There were also few pedestrians on both sides of the street. Almost no one was seen shopping. Even if someone passed by, they were in a hurry. Although the T-virus leak only occurred in Shinagawa District, Tokyo, it paralyzed the order of the entire Tokyo. Thousands of companies filed for bankruptcy protection overnight. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs, and the Japanese Prime Minister announced last night that the country has entered a state of emergency. Citizens who lack food and daily necessities need to go to designated locations to receive rations. All Japanese people were surprised to find that their high-spirited prime minister in the international arena seemed to have turned grey overnight. Not only are the citizens of Tokyo in dire straits, but the quality of life of people in other parts of Japan has also declined significantly. The tourism, real estate, and retail industries have been the first to bear the brunt, suffering a devastating blow while spreading the economic crisis to other areas. However, the most serious loss is not these, but the yen itself. The monetary quantitative easing policy that the Japanese Prime Minister introduced when promoting Abe's economics some time ago has caused the yen to fall to a maximum of 134:1 against the US dollar. Although it has improved in 2017, it has never returned to the level of 2014. Before the virus broke out, the international exchange rate was about 106 yen per US dollar, and after the T-virus broke out, the exchange rate directly became 1:532. Fill the gap of 5 times. Tanaka's T-virus turned the Japanese bourgeoisie into the middle class overnight, the middle class into the proletariat, and the proletariat into refugees begging on the streets. Just yesterday, Future Group had injected $5.2 billion into the account of its branch in Tokyo, preparing to acquire small and medium-sized enterprises on the verge of bankruptcy in Japan, as well as land, real estate, and skyscrapers that had depreciated sharply. As for Jiang Chen's arrival, Japanese politicians and entrepreneurs can be said to be both happy and worried. The good news is that the country's monetary and financial system has collapsed, and Japan is really in urgent need of foreign investors to enter the market, to inject vitality into this shaky economy. However, they are afraid that Jiang Chen is not here to save their economy with the money, but to cut their flesh. After getting off the car, Jiang Chen said goodbye to Takagi Yosuke and walked into the company building under the guidance of CEO Ren Pengfei. The building of Future Group's Japanese branch is located in Shibuya District, Tokyo. Because a large number of high-tech companies are gathered here, Shibuya is also known as the Silicon Valley of Japan. Although it is adjacent to the Shinagawa District, which is under full quarantine, the business of Future Group has not been greatly affected. However, it can be predicted that for a considerable period of time in the future Future Group's business in Japan will experience negative profit growth. In addition to Future Biologicals vaccine. Mr. Chairman, I have booked a room for you at the Hilton Hotel. Do you need me to take you to the hotel first? Ren Pengfei asked respectfully. No, I don't plan to stay in a hotel. Jiang Chen shook his head. Ren Pengfei was stunned. Not staying in a hotel? If not, can I sleep in the company? But there are no beds in the company? Contact the most famous real estate developers in Tokyo for me. Yamato House Construction and Mitsu Real Estate. These two real estate companies are basically the largest real estate developers in Tokyo. Which company has the widest business scope in Tokyo? It should be Yamato Housing Construction. Ren Pengfei thought for a moment and answered. Jiang Chen nodded. This is it. Please contact Yamato Housing Construction for me. I plan to buy a few houses. The exit was a few houses. Ren Pengfei was immediately shocked by the tycoon in front of him. However, thinking of Wall Street's asset evaluation of Jiang Chen, he didn't think much of it and nodded in response. Yes. After Ren Pengfei left, Jiang Chen sat directly on his office chair and looked at the layout of the office. The birchwood decoration didn't have any special highlights, but it looked very comfortable. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind could directly overlook the street view of the most prosperous area of Shibuya, and the lighting was also very good. Jiang Chen originally planned to buy a more NB skyscraper for the branch of Future Group, but it seemed unnecessary after looking at it this way. Not long after, Ren Pengfei walked in with a short middle-aged man who looked very smart at first glance. Before Jiang Chen could speak, the Japanese introduced himself with a smile and bowed his head. I'm Ken Koizumi, the general manager of Yamato Housing Construction Tokyo District. I didn't expect to meet Jiang Chen here. It is a great honor. No need for polite words. I'm Jiang Chen. I plan to buy a few houses in Tokyo. Does your company have any good houses to recommend? Jiang Chen went straight to the point. Ken Koizumi was not dissatisfied with Jiang Chen interrupting him. When he heard Jiang Chen's words, his small eyes almost smiled and shone. Of course. We at Yamato Housing Construction have the most abundant houses in Japan. Not only that, if Mr. Jiang Chen likes a house that we don't have, we can also act as a real estate agent. Whether it is the luxury, location, or price, we guarantee that you will be satisfied. If Mr. Jiang is willing to pay in US dollars, we can also give you a discount. Chapter 716 Buying Tokyo. Koizumi Ken did what he said. The house that Yamato Fangjian provided really satisfied Jiang Chen. A 2,000 square meter villa with a beautiful environment and its own garden is located in the suburbs of Tokyo, overlooking the sea view of Tokyo Bay. The most important thing is that it is far away from the noise of the city, and it is a good place to hide from others and commit murders. However, the only regret is, how much is Mount Fuji? What? Don't you provide intermediary services? Minister Takagi recommended the scenery of Mount Fuji to me, and I plan to buy it. Jiang Chen said in a half-joking tone. I'm really sorry, Mount Fuji has no property owner, so it is not for sale. If Mr. Jiang is interested, we recommend this golf course at the foot of Mount Fuji. It has its own resort and entertainment facilities, which can be converted into a private villa. Koizumi Ken said with a sweat. That's really a pity. What about the golf course? How much is it? 5.2 billion yen. If you pay in US dollars, we can give you a discount. Only 9.5 million US dollars. When saying this, Koizumi Ken's heart was beating. If it was a month ago, this 18-hole golf course would have cost about 5 billion yen, but at that time, 5 billion yen would have been converted into 47.5 million US dollars according to the exchange rate. However, there was no way out. The bank couldn't lend money now. In order to make Yamato Housing's capital turnover, the real estate industry was particularly capital intensive. All he could do now was to collect as many US dollars as possible to reduce the losses that the continued depreciation of the yen might bring to the company. No problem, let's buy them together. Jiang Chen waved his hand and threw the golf course into the shopping cart as if he was buying Chinese cabbage. Don't know how to play golf? It doesn't matter, you can learn it. It doesn't matter, if you can't learn it, you can use it to show off, or it would be a good choice to keep it for a dozen years and then sell it. In short, with the current exchange rate of the yen, you won't lose anything here. Since he bought a villa where he stayed and a golf course, Jiang Chen simply took advantage of the big discount of the yen, picked up another thick booklet provided by Koizumi Ken, and bought it crazily according to the pictures and text. The properties marked on this booklet are not the properties of Yamato House Ken, but the properties that major household owners have entrusted Yamato House Ken to act as an intermediary and put up for sale. Koizumi Ken certainly won't bother Jiang Chen with those small apartment buildings. The properties registered in this booklet are all properties with a price of more than 5 million US dollars. But even after screening, affected by the T-virus and domestic pessimism, the properties registered for sale are still numerous. Everyone wants to escape this city, whether foreigners or locals. Even if future human biology upgrades the vaccine, it cannot stop people's panic about the living dead. Rumors such as mosquitoes and flies carrying viruses and being bitten by stray dogs may cause secondary infection are rampant. Even though the official media has repeatedly reiterated that both T and T viruses have a very short survival time outside the body and cannot be carried and spread by other organisms, it still cannot stop the spread of rumors. Shibuya 109 building, the fashion mecca in the minds of Japanese girls, only 60 million US dollars? Buy it. Shibuya Modi, Tokyo's new landmark, leisure, entertainment, culture and commercial center. This price is quite cheap, it belongs to me. Shinjuku Commercial Street, Akihabara, newly developed villa area in Minato. Anyway, it's a bargain price now, buy it. As long as Yamato Housing has it, Jiang Chen bought all the properties he liked. However, he did not use the funds of Future Group, but used the money in his personal account. Throwing out 11 billion US dollars, he almost bought half of Tokyo. Of course, Jiang Chen could not develop these properties by himself, and he did not have the energy. At that time, he would hire a few professional managers and set up a real estate leasing company. Wouldn't it be great to collect rent from the Japanese? It was not until the evening that Jiang Chen completed all the transfer procedures. After returning to the company with a huge sum of $11 billion, Koizumi Ken didn't know whether he should cry or laugh. He laughed because the agency fee alone would bring in hundreds of millions of dollars, and he cried because even this huge business of tens of billions of dollars could not make up for the losses of Yamato housing in recent days. However, in the short term, Tokyo's housing prices still cannot escape the curse of continuous decline. It is a happy thing to sell these properties early. Regardless of what Koizumi Ken thinks, Jiang Chen is very satisfied with the result. The sky gradually darkened, and it was time to get off work. Recently, the public security in Tokyo at night is very poor. The company cancelled all night shifts, so Jiang Chen did not bother him, and said goodbye to Ren Pengfei. After requisitioning 2 more Mercedes-Benz cars from the company, he left Shibuya with several bodyguards from Starring Trading. The public security situation is bad, but the road conditions are relatively good. After an hour's drive, Jiang Chen arrived at the villa he had just bought. According to Koizumi Ken, this villa is usually taken care of by someone hired, and it can be moved in after the transfer. At the same time, the employment contract of the servants will also be transferred to the name of the householder. After parking the car in the garage, the bodyguards of Starring Trading consciously went to every corner of the villa and set up cameras, sensors and other security devices. Although there are only 6 people, with the help of high-tech equipment, the strength of Xinghuan Trade bodyguards is definitely among the best in the world's security companies. When he opened the door, he saw a beautiful maid in a black and white British maid outfit kneeling dignifiedly at the entrance, nodding and greeting him with her signature smile. At this moment, Jiang Chen finally understood the last all men understand smile of Koizumi Ken when he said goodbye. Can you buy a villa and give a maid? It's so corrupt. With a heavy mood, Jiang Chen restrained the urge to criticize the life of the Japanese bourgeoisie and ordered the maid to go to the kitchen to make him 2 cups of black tea and bring them to the bedroom. The tea was quickly brewed and placed on the bedside table. Ignoring the maid's blushing face, Jiang Chen did not do anything to her. Instead, he waved his hand to signal her to go back to her room first, and then closed the bedroom door in her confused expression. The air on the bed was slightly distorted, and Aisha, who had ended her optical camouflage, appeared beside Jiang Chen, looking at him with the same confused eyes. That look seemed to be asking, don't you want to eat the little white rabbit that was delivered to your door? How can I have time to do this now? No, am I that kind of person? Jiang Chen rolled his eyes at Aisha and sat next to her. How is it? Did anyone follow us along the way? Aisha shook her head. Really? Jiang Chen sighed. It really wasn't that easy. I hope it was just because of Tanaka's caution, not because I guessed wrong. Thinking so in his heart, Jiang Chen lay on the bed. Aisha moved over and lay on Jiang Chen like a kitten, looking at him with her sapphire eyes. Are you going to sleep? However, those big eyes that could speak revealed her deepest thoughts. Don't you want to do something? Staring at the gentleness in those eyes, Jiang Chen felt that a certain string in his heart was gently plucked. Well, he couldn't bear it anymore. Aisha, go turn off the lights and the curtains. Yes. Chapter 717. Lure the snake out of its hole. In the early morning, a ray of sunlight penetrated the curtains. Jiang Chen opened his eyes and lay on the bed for a while. Aisha, who was lying next to him, had disappeared. The plan required her to hide in the dark, so she would not live with Jiang Chen, but lurked nearby. Jiang Chen could see her location on the EP map, but he did not open the map. His intuition told him that she was not in the villa now. Since awakening the power of the second hidden gene code, Jiang Chen found that he was becoming more and more sensitive to human breath. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call it intuition. Now his intuition told him that Tanaka had noticed him, but was still hesitating whether to get close. The maid brought breakfast to the table and knocked gently at the door of the bedroom, reminding Jiang Chen to get up and have breakfast. Getting up from the bed, Jiang Chen took the clothes from the hanger and put them on. After washing up in the bathroom, he went straight to the dining room. There were bread slices, fried eggs, and a cup of coffee on the table. Taking a bite of the bread slices coated with honey, Jiang Chen nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, with good color, fragrance, and taste. Looking at the maid standing next to him, Jiang Chen couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It's so corrupt. This damn bourgeoisie. The maid respectfully placed today's newspaper on the table and then stood aside. How long have you worked here? Jiang Chen asked casually. This is my first job. If you can afford to live in a mansion worth tens of billions of yen, your net worth will not be low. Although the country's small film industry is well developed, many Japanese tycoons are surprisingly clean. After all, things are rare and valuable, and Yamato House will naturally not use some inferior goods to disgust big customers. Speaking of which, I haven't asked your name yet. My name is Suzuki Chinatsu. The master can just call me Chinatsu. Chinatsu said with a smile. You don't look very old. Are you still studying? Well, I'm studying education at Waseda University, and I've taken 3 foreign languages, including Chinese, English, and Korean. It turns out that he is still a top student. No wonder he speaks Chinese so fluently. Waseda University? It seems that you have good grades. No way. Education is a lower level department in Waseda University and is often jokingly called a second-rate department. Chinatsu joked politely. Are you going to be a teacher in the future? Jiang Chen asked with a smile. Chinatsu smiled and shook her head. I've thought about it before, but I'm not very good at it. Just kidding. The salary of a teacher is not as high as being a maid here. A monthly salary of 2 million yen was an unimaginable amount of money for her a few months ago. You know, the average salary in Japan is only about 200,000 yen, and even her professor only earns 500,000 yen. Although this job is a bit asterisk nature, compared with its easy work content and disproportionate income, it can be said to be not worth mentioning. And if you really have a relationship with the master, it would be like a phoenix flying up a tree. Are you not going to class? After the virus incident in Shinagawa district, the school was suspended. That's really sad news. Although there was no expression of compassion on Jiang Chen's face when he said this. Well, more than a dozen people from our school were killed in Shinagawa district. It felt like the disaster happened right next to us. It was really terrible. Jiang Chen could see her sadness from Chinatsu's expression. Perhaps among the dozen or so people who died there were people she knew, or even her friends. Jiang Chen sighed and said softly, look at it more positively. Isn't that how it's shot in the movies? The villains will eventually be punished. Well, I hope. That smile was very iconic, but Jiang Chen could feel the haze behind the sunshine. After breakfast, the maid took the plates into the kitchen. Jiang Chen took a sip of coffee, picked up the newspaper and started reading. He developed the habit of reading newspapers very early because he was always running back and forth between the two worlds. In order not to be out of touch with the world here, it was still necessary to understand current affairs. The chairman of Future Group spent $11 billion to buy Tokyo real estate at the bottom. This news was published in Japanese media newspapers. Sure enough, the people of Yamato Housing will not miss this opportunity to hype. While everyone is pessimistic about the Japanese economy, Future Group's bottom fishing of Tokyo real estate will undoubtedly help boost investor confidence. Nonsense. No one wants to be neighbors with the living dead. Tanaka has not yet grasped that the T-virus may break out for the first time and the second time. No one wants to be neighbors with the living dead. Because of the impact of the T-virus, housing prices in Tokyo's urban areas have fallen to the bottom, just like the economic crisis in the 1990s. And the housing prices in Shinagawa district, let alone houses, many owners have lost their houses, and the houses can only be reclaimed by the Tokyo metropolitan government. Why did Jiang Chen dare to buy at the bottom? It was only because he knew that the black ships would not last long. American economists analyze that due to the virus, the depreciation of the yen, and the wave of corporate bankruptcies, Tokyo's housing prices may continue to fall, and it is too early to buy at the bottom. Very good. It seems that Wall Street investors are ready to make a move. Jiang Chen secretly thanked himself for coming early, otherwise this bargain would have been picked up by others. Not only Tokyo's real estate, but also those Japanese high-tech companies on the verge of bankruptcy. The future group will also acquire them. It has to be admitted that Japanese companies do have strong hard power in the electronics industry. For example, medical care, energy, robots, cameras, display screens, optical components. These technologies are even stronger than Silicon Valley in the United States in some aspects. The most important thing is that these technologies happen to be used by the future group. He will have another press conference later about future technologies acquisition of 3 Japanese electronics companies and cooperation with future heavy industries to enter the mobile phone manufacturing industry. At the same time, he will also serve as a spokesperson for future technology to explain the issues of privatization and asset restructuring to the shareholders of these 3 listed companies at the meeting. At this time, Jiang Chen felt the watch on his left hand vibrate. Glancing in the direction of the kitchen, Jiang Chen did not call up Jane's holographic image, but just turned on the voice function. Jane's voice immediately appeared in his ears. They succeeded. Garrett? Yes. The Kenyan drug factory has been destroyed, killing 214 militants, destroying about 1.7 tons of virus stock and 50 tons of raw materials. Although the Kenyan military was alarmed, our combat units did not reveal their identities and successfully evacuated from Kenya. Very good. Jiang Chen nodded and said only these 2 words. This is almost half of the inventory of the Black Ship organization. Tanaka tried to hide the Black Ship behind a terrorist organization, using terrorism to export the T-virus to the world and realize the Black Ship's doomsday plan. From now on, Starring Trade will use thunderous means to put pressure on them, forcing them from the rat hole to the sun and standing in front of them. It's almost time. Putting the newspaper aside, Jiang Chen drank the rest of the coffee in one breath, got up and walked out the door. Hearing the sound at the entrance, Chinatsu walked out of the kitchen. Master, are you ready to go out? Yes. After changing his shoes at the door, Jiang Chen stood beside the mirror and straightened his collar. When will you be back? I'll prepare lunch, Chinatsu said with a smile. In the evening. By the way, do you have your own house in Tokyo? I have a small apartment that I rented for a year, but I haven't been back for a long time. You can stay at your own house today. Did I do something wrong? Chinatsu lowered her head and said pitifully. When he opened the door, Jiang Chen turned around and said with a smile. No, it's just that tonight, I might have something to do. Chapter 718 How about you give me a hand? The above is Futureman Technologies restructuring plan for Zyra Electronics, Shangchuan Intelligence and other 3 companies. Thank you to all the media and shareholders for your support. Thank you. Applause broke out from the audience, but none of the original shareholders of the 3 acquired companies had expressions that could be called smiles on their faces. Even if Futureman Group offered a good price and took over the mess in their hands, it still could not make up for the losses they suffered in the virus incident. The reporters' reactions were relatively positive, and their questions to Jiang Chen were similar. What kind of products will Futureman Technology launch? What shocking functions will this product have? When are you going to get married? These reporters always like to find opportunities to insert some strange questions in serious occasions. In short, the press conference ended successfully, and it was already late. Surrounded by bodyguards, Jiang Chen walked out of the venue and got into the Mercedes-Benz at the door. Boss, where are we going now? The driver started the car and turned his head to ask Jiang Chen. Go straight home. Okay. The driver nodded and skillfully turned the steering wheel to get on the road. 2 Mercedes-Benz cars were in front and behind to protect the car Jiang Chen was sitting in. Although the bodyguards in the car were wearing suits, they were all wearing real exoskeletons. Even without guns, their fighting power could rival a 6-man infantry squad. With such strong fighting power, Jiang Chen couldn't help but wonder if Tanaka was too scared to take action because the bodyguards around him were too strong. But after thinking about it, he shook his head and gave up the idea. The news that he was in Japan had already been released. With Tanaka's madness and the threat he posed to the Black Ship, he would never miss this opportunity. In the new country that was absolutely controlled by Starring Trade, the Black Ship organization had no chance to take action. In the car, Sun Jiao suddenly called. How did the acquisition go? It went smoothly. The CEO of the branch company handled it for me. I felt that I was of no use at all. I just became a mascot at the press conference. Jiang Chen made a helpless expression and teased in a teasing tone. Hearing Jiang Chen's frivolous voice, Sun Jiao sighed and complained like a housekeeper. So I told you, there is no need to go there in person for such a thing. The situation in Japan is not peaceful now. As the chairman of the group, if you go to such a dangerous place, if something happens to you, you won't even have an heir. Haha, how about you help me? Somehow, this joke that shouldn't be made just came out of his mouth. So much so that after saying it, Jiang Chen himself was stunned. But just when he was about to explain calmly, a busy tone came from the other end of the phone. Oh my. It's just a joke. There's no need to hang up on me. Jiang Chen muttered, hesitated, and finally didn't call back, but put the phone back in his pocket, leaned back on the car, and closed his eyes to rest. At this moment, thousands of kilometers away, the hand holding the phone kept trembling. Sun Jiao's face was covered with blush, and the original serious expression disappeared. The phone slid onto the folder. Without warning, she suddenly lay on the table, hiding her entire blood-red face in her arms. It was obviously just a joke. Why am I so excited? I hung up the phone suddenly. Doesn't it seem that I took it seriously? How embarrassing. Will he think that I... Why should I care what he thinks? It really pissed me off. It has to be said that women's thinking circuits always have more twists and turns than men, and they can't find the north after going around in circles. Regardless of the chaos Sun Jiao was in, Jiang Chen was really leaning back in his seat with his eyes closed, not taking the previous episode to heart at all. The car gradually drove out of the city, and the bustling high-rise buildings retreated, replaced by lush trees and Japanese-style residences. Jiang Chen glanced at the car's GPS, and it was only a few kilometers away from the villa in the suburbs. It was completely dark, and street lights were on. There were few people on both sides of the road. Due to the chaos caused by the economic depression and the collapse of order, the whole of Tokyo was not very safe. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of the little maid he had just taken in. He let her go back to his apartment alone, hoping that nothing would happen. Suddenly, Jiang Chen opened his eyes. The feeling became stronger and stronger, as if something was staring at him from a distance. Is it coming? Jiang Chen muttered to himself, and put his hand into his pocket. Feeling the heavy metal texture, his hand grasped the grip of the Type 11 pistol. At the same time, Aisha's voice came from the miniature earphone hidden in his ear. There is a situation 300 meters ahead. There are a lot of heat source reactions in the grove. A roadblock has been set up in the middle of the road. Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes. Just say how many people there are. 57 people. 57 people. Even if they were wanted by the whole world, could the black ship mobilize so many believers in the suburbs of Tokyo? This was beyond Jiang Chen's expectations. He originally thought that Tanaka would play a dirty trick on him, but he didn't expect that Tanaka would play an open trick and stand in front of him. Where are you now? In the villa. Wait, something is wrong. There is only one person, and the others are under the street lights not far away. There were shadowy figures, dull eyes and drooping hands. Jiang Chen knew what these things were. It was zombies. Without hesitation, Jiang Chen immediately ordered the driver. Stop. The three cars stopped in response. The bodyguards of Xinghuan Trading obviously noticed that something was wrong. 6 people, including the driver, immediately got out of the car and protected Jiang Chen's car in the middle. Although there were more than 50 zombies on the opposite side, and there were only 6 batons on their side, no one showed fear on their faces. Whether it was the T-virus or the TT virus, it made no difference to them who had been injected with genetic drugs. Unable to infect through biting, the threat of zombies was mostly gone. The car door was pushed open again, and Jiang Chen got out of the car. Chairman, it's dangerous outside. Please stay in the car. The bodyguard standing in the front row saw Jiang Chen get out of the car and whispered, "No, it's more dangerous to stay in the car." Jiang Chen said calmly, walked to the front of the team, and stood in front of Tanaka a few dozen meters away. We meet again. Yes, the last time we met was last year, Tanaka said with a smile. It was the year before last, and it was already 2018 a few days ago. Is that so? I can't help it. I'm a wanted criminal, and I don't remember dates very clearly. Seeing Tanaka's expression without any tension, Jiang Chen suddenly laughed. As the saying goes, 3 times is the limit. We tied the first 2 times. This time, shouldn't we decide the winner? That's what I mean. Tanaka said with a smile. So, you are going to fight me with these 56 zombies? Jiang Chen asked with a smile, reaching into his pocket. Of course, don't underestimate them. Tanaka spread his hands with a smile. They are all the crystallization of science. In an instant, the pair of dull pupils were dyed blood red. As if driven by some kind of power, the muscles of these zombies began to expand outwards like boiling water, accompanied by violent roars. Chapter 719. That day will never come. The sallow skin quickly oozes out a pale green color, and the weak limbs swell up into huge muscles like rocks at an unscientific rate. A dull and bloodthirsty roar echoes in the jungles on both sides of the road. On this deserted road, the mutant zombies howled and rushed over, shaking off their staggering steps, and running wildly towards Jiang Chen. 6 batons were swung out in unison, hitting the rushing zombies fearlessly. Get closer. Get ready to fight. Looking at those obviously difficult mutant zombies, the bodyguard leader's scalp numbed. But thinking that the chairman was standing behind him, he still held the mentality of risking his life, shouted loudly, took a defensive posture, and signaled his comrades to get closer to him. In the case of an absolute disadvantage in numbers, the only safest way is to get closer. The 6 bodyguards escorted Jiang Chen and retreated to a car, surrounded the city in a C formation, showing the exoskeleton under the suit, ready to fight the zombies. However, at this moment, Jiang Chen patted the shoulder of the bodyguard leader and motioned him to make way. Looking at Jiang Chen, who was drowned by the tide of corpses, Tanaka raised his head and laughed. Ha ha ha, although I guessed that you were luring me out, you want to kill me with only 6 bodyguards? You are too arrogant. Don't be too sad. Before you die, give my servants a name. Before the operation began, he had sent a message to the black ship through the clean particles, interfering with the movement law of the clean particles in the solar system, and blocking Jiang Chen's door to the end of the world. Although Jiang Chen has a lot of good things on him, even if he takes out the power armor at this moment, he has no chance to climb in. As long as Jiang Chen dies, the mission of the Black Ship organization can also be ended. Maintaining a steady pace of technological development, the Earth civilization will never be able to defeat the Black Ship on the day of the decisive battle. No one can stop this evolution towards harmony. Suddenly, a light flashed in the group of corpses, and a gust of wind blew past Tanaka's face. A stinging sensation came from Tanaka's cheek, but no blood dripped. The high temperature caused the wound to scab in an instant. Tanaka's triangular eyes shrank slightly. The group of zombies that originally surrounded Jiang Chen was directly cut open, and 17 or 18 of them fell instantly. Jiang Chen, who was standing behind the gap, held a lightsaber in his hand. The long blade of the sword emitted a light blue light. The light was very soft and dangerous. It seems that you have a lot of good things. Tanaka's eyes slightly showed a trace of solemnity. That's right. The lightsaber danced to sword flowers in Jiang Chen's hand and pointed at the group of zombies rushing towards him. And there are far more than you see. The death of their companions did not scare these zombies. They still ran towards Jiang Chen fearlessly. However, before they came into contact with Jiang Chen, they soon crashed into a wall. A wall composed of gunfire and rain of bullets. Like a storm, the rain-like bullets tore the remaining 30 zombies into pieces in an instant. Like a ghost, a black-clad warrior holding a Ripper rifle appeared out of thin air in front of Jiang Chen. The bodyguards beside Jiang Chen were completely stunned. They thought they would be in a tough fight, but they didn't expect that they would not have to fight in the end. Although they had heard of the high technology in the company, they never thought that they would see laser sword and optical invisibility in reality, which only appeared on the screen of science fiction blockbusters. The ground was full of broken limbs and arms, and the black blood stained the streets red. Tanaka opened his mouth and finally let out a helpless sigh. I thought that more than 50 mutant zombies would be enough to deal with you, but I didn't expect that I was careless. Not only can you actively induce zombie mutations, but you can also use zombies as your own slaves. You are also beyond my expectations. Jiang Chen put away the laser sword and said lightly, yes, the first guess is right, but the second one is a bit wrong. Tanaka said with a smile, even I can't drive the zombies, I can only make them treat me as one of their own. On the entire road, there were only him, Jiang Chen and 6 bodyguards at the moment. There was no need to drive these zombies, just strengthen their senses and motor abilities to be able to detect Jiang Chen and others, and they would consciously pounce on them and tear the living people they saw into pieces. Where did the zombies come from? There is a small village nearby. It took me a lot of effort to drive these zombies here. Tanaka said with a smile, his hand on the brim of his hat. It's a pity that I have played all the cards in my hand. We can only fight to the death next time. Jiang Chen smiled, looked into his eyes, and said to himself, my thinking has always been in a misunderstanding. Tanaka stopped what he was doing and looked at Jiang Chen with interest. Oh, do you have any interesting insights that you want to share with me? Jiang Chen did not speak, but turned around to look at the bodyguard behind him. You guys go to the villa and wait for me. It's only 3 kilometers away. Leave me a car. I can go back by myself. But, this is an order, Jiang Chen said in an unquestionable tone. Yes. The head of the bodyguards gritted his teeth and waved to the bodyguards behind him. The 6 bodyguards put away their batons and got in the car. The 2 cars bypassed the roadblock in the middle of the road and drove towards the villa. You guys should leave first. After the bodyguards left, Jiang Chen looked at his watch and then said to the 4 ghost agents in front of him, yes, sir. Without any nonsense, the 4 ghost agents nodded and disappeared on the road. All the irrelevant people left, leaving only 2 people on the road. Jiang Chen looked at Tanaka and said, it's not an insight, it's just that I got an inspiration by chance and found something interesting. Everyone who has seen you thinks you are one person. But is that really the case? Keeping his fingers on the brim of his hat, Tanaka still had a smiling expression. Of course I'm alone, what else could I be? Many people. Tanaka's face finally changed, and his smiling eyes gradually turned into fierce triangular eyes. That expression was like a gambler whose last trump card was revealed. Although this slight change was so undetectable under the dim street lights, Jiang Chen, with his enhanced senses, still keenly captured this slight change. The light bulb flickered slightly, and silence lasted for a moment on the road. Tanaka slowly spoke. So what? Yeah, so what? Jiang Chen sighed. You have heard of the term cloud computing. Tanaka's pupils flickered with anxiety. All programs are run on the server side, and the server side will eventually compress the calculation results and transmit them to users through the network, allowing users to use low configuration computers and enjoy high-end services. The premise is that the network is unobstructed. So, are you going to teach me computer knowledge? Tanaka whispered. Of course not. Jiang Chen spread his hands and put away his laser sword. If my guess is correct, now, you can take off your hat. Tanaka took off his hat. The cap fell to the ground. However, the development of things was beyond his expectations. His consciousness did not leave him, and everything in front of him was still so clear, just like a VR player suddenly found that he could not log out of the game at any time. His pupils shrank in disbelief, and Tanaka's calm expression rarely showed a trace of panic. This is impossible. Impossible. The black ship did not respond to his request. Satisfied with the expression on Tanaka's face, Jiang Chen finally raised a triumphant smile at the corner of his mouth. It seems that I bet right. Your so-called rebirth is based on a special kind of cloud computing. Through a server dozens of light years away, the memory and thinking of user A are transplanted to user B. However, how can the black ship, which is dozens of light years away, know when you need to be reborn? So let's make a bold assumption that the hat on your head and your own life signal are the switches to start rebirth. From the hesitation on Tanaka's face, Jiang Chen confirmed his guess. The next thing will be easy. Crane particles can interfere with each other. Since you can use strong interactions to prevent me from communicating with the gate and thus prevent me from initiating the crossing, then conversely, I can also prevent the transmission of information between you and the black ship. You may not know that during the military operation in Kenya, when Garrett killed you, you used the ability of rebirth to switch your consciousness to this body in Japan, and I had already recorded your communication band. Only the two of us on the entire earth know how to use crane particles correctly to communicate. Maybe I can't parse the content of your communication with the black ship, but the sound you make is as obvious as shouting in an empty valley. As long as the communication band is recorded, it's easy to interfere with the communication. You just need to continuously stimulate the vibration of the crane particles at a specific frequency. And you also know that I can go to another world where there is something called subcrystals, and the crane particles are so rich that it's unimaginable. It's not safe to use crane particles as a means of communication, am I right? A drop of cold sweat slid down Tanaka's forehead, and his footsteps moved back slightly by half a step. This was the first time he had been so scared since he had acquired the ability to regenerate from the black ship. Before he died, he could be reborn in another body by taking off his hat. No matter how he tried to kill himself, he would never die, and he wouldn't even have to experience the pain of death, because rebirth happened in an instant. Do you think you can run away? Jiang Chen watched him move backwards with a playful smile on his face. With a glimmer of ruthlessness in his eyes, Tanaka pulled out a pistol from his pocket and pointed it at Jiang Chen. Bang! The sound of gunfire resounded on the lonely highway, but the bullet seemed to hit a wall and was blown away by the swelling airflow and disappeared. Nitrogen armor, as you can see, I have a lot of good stuff. Jiang Chen sighed and said. Tanaka made a prompt decision and pointed the gun at himself. His ability to regenerate had double insurance. The communication shielding could not last forever, even if it was lifted for a moment. As long as the black ship detected that he was dead, he could wake up from another body. However, before the gun was pointed at him, his hand was clamped by a hand that stretched out from behind. There was a sharp pain in his back, and the numbness quickly spread to his whole body along the location of the pain. Well done. Walking in front of Tanaka, Jiang Chen smiled and nodded to Aisha, who was standing behind him, then picked up the baseball cap from the ground, dusted it off, and put it back on Tanaka's head. I haven't figured out how to kill you yet, so please stay alive. Wearing this annoying hat, lying quietly in the underground facility of Crescent Island for the rest of his life. Haha, I didn't expect that I would reach the end of the world before you. Beads of sweat slid down his forehead. Tanaka stared straight into Jiang Chen's eyes, and the voice that he squeezed out with difficulty from his throat was a bit self-deprecating. It's a very ironic ending. The black pupils shrank, as if they were in the last moments of life, and he squeezed out these words, as if he was struggling to survive. Don't be happy too soon, I will wait for you on the day of doom. Don't worry, that day will never come. Jiang Chen said softly, while Tanaka's pupils were completely dilated. Because I'm here. Chapter 720, The End of the Black Ship. Tanaka will be injected with anesthesia every 12 hours, and will remain in a coma, and be sent to the underground facility of Crescent Island. There, he will wear his hat and lie in the virtual reality incubator, imprisoned in the desolate virtual world forever, and suffer mental torture. He will never die, never be able to take off his hat, and never be able to contact the black ship, until he dies of old age. Perhaps, this is more desperate than death. At the same time, Starring Trade contacted the president of Kenya, and reported the details of the military operation in the Mandala region to the Kenyan authorities. At first, the Kenyan president's expression, after learning about it, was angry, because the soldiers of Starring Trade not only airdropped into Kenya without authorization, but also shot 214 Shabab militants. Even if the target of the attack is terrorists, who gave you the power to enforce the law? Where will the face of the Kenyan government be put if it is out? There were no civilian casualties. However, when Starring Trade placed the battle video and evidence of the destruction of 1.7 tons of virus stock solution and 50 tons of virus raw materials on the desk of the Kenyan president suddenly remained silent. If 1.7 tons of TT virus spreads throughout Kenya, it will be enough to turn the entire country into an uninhabited area. The president of Kenya had a phone call with Jiang Chen. After just 5 minutes of communication, the whole incident turned out like this. Yesterday, with the authorization of the Kenyan government, the Starring Trading Military Company launched a surgical military operation against the city of Mandara in Kenya, near the Somali border. A total of 12 Marines airdropped into the area, and with the cooperation of the Kenyan military and police, they killed a total of 214 Shabab militants and completely destroyed the Shabab extremist organization's base in Mandera. In the Shabab base, the soldiers of Starring Trading destroyed a total of 1.7 tons of TT virus concentrate and 50 tons of raw materials for producing the virus. In this large-scale drug enforcement operation, Tanaka, the culprit of the Tokyo virus incident, was killed on the spot. As for the name of the hero who killed Tanaka, Starring Trading Company refused to disclose it. The White House spokesman said that Starring Trading's discovery in the Shabab base just confirmed the necessity and rationality of NATO's military operations in Somalia. And he reiterated that terrorist organizations must never be allowed to obtain the T-virus. Tanaka is dead, at least in name. The fewer people know that he is still alive, the better. If other countries knew that Tanaka was not actually dead, but was imprisoned by Jiang Chen in an underground facility on Crescent Island, the situation might not be very good. Of course, they will never know this. In the morning, Jiang Chen sat in the dining room of the villa and saw the news on TV. The breakfast on the table was very shabby. A cup of milk and a bowl of fried rice. Chinatsu was not in the villa last night, and Aisha escorted Tanaka back to New Country overnight. Jiang Chen was not interested in eating the food made by the 6 burly men outside the door, so he had to do it himself. He hadn't cooked for a long time, so he fried himself a bowl of fried rice on a whim and creatively added some imported products from the end of the world. For example, delicious mud crab sauce and edible lizard meat slices. However, the reality is cruel. Deliciousness cannot be simply 1 + 1 = 2. Although the fried rice made in the end did not become a dark dish, the taste was really unpredictable. Recalling the days when he worked in Wanghai City 3 years ago, Jiang Chen couldn't help but sigh. What a waste of his good cooking skills. When thinking about this, he completely forgot that he seemed to be good at scrambled eggs with tomatoes at the beginning. After finishing breakfast in no time, Jiang Chen leaned on the sofa to rest for a while, looking at the beautiful decoration in the room, and couldn't help but be dazed for a while. The Black Ship organization was destroyed just like that. To be honest, he really felt relieved. The Black Ship organization was like a tumor on the back of civilization, and the T-virus it produced was corroding civilization itself, making all order shaky, and he didn't want this world to become the end of the world, even if it was a country he didn't like. Fortunately, he ended it all before the situation got worse. There was a knock on the door. Jiang Chen got up, walked to the entrance, and opened the door. 2 Japanese policemen, 1 man and 1 woman, appeared at the door. Whether from their expressions or actions, they seemed very restrained. This may be because they know Jiang Chen's identity, or it may be because of the muscular bodyguard of Starring Trade next to him. The older looking policeman spoke first, asking in not very standard English, "Hello, Mr. Jiang. I'm a policeman from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. Please cooperate with us." "Do you need me to go to the police station with you?" Jiang Chen asked with a smile. No, we just want to know if you found any suspicious people near the villa yesterday," the old policeman asked. "You can ask my bodyguards. They may pay more attention to what happened outside than me." Jiang Chen shrugged and smiled. Tanaka once said that he got the material for zombies from a village near the suburbs of Tokyo. A whole village of people disappeared, not to mention that traces of the T-virus were found in the village. It is impossible not to alert the local police. However, Jiang Chen cleaned the section of the road that was used as the battlefield very cleanly, threw all the bodies into the end of the world, and sprinkled blood melting agent on the road. Even if Detective Conan came, he could not find out the direct connection between the disappearance of the villagers and Tanaka, and the indirect connection with Jiang Chen. Including the Japanese National Police Agency, they did not list Jiang Chen as a suspect at all. Are you kidding? If an entrepreneur of Jiang Chen's level really wants to do something that harms others and does not benefit himself, does he need to go to Japan in person? "Oh, I'm so sorry to bother you." The old policeman bowed and prepared to leave. However, at this time, the female police officer took a half step forward, glanced at the entrance suspiciously, and then looked at Jiang Chen. "Is there anyone else in the villa?" Compared with the old policeman, the female police officer's English is much more standard, and she is obviously well educated. There is also a maid. Miss Policewoman, do you have any questions? Jiang Chen asked with a smile. Where is she? In the apartment she rented. Is it the same apartment she goes back to every day? Or did she go back only today? The policewoman asked aggressively. This girl is quite smart. Jiang Chen was stunned for a moment and looked at the policewoman in front of him with interest. May I ask your name? Shangshan Kui. Please don't avoid my question, Mr. Jiang. Shangshan Kui directly reported her full name, looked into Jiang Chen's eyes, and spoke word by word. Very good, Miss Shangshan. I noticed that you used an interrogation tone. Do you mean that there was a criminal case on your side, and I'm the object of your suspicion? Jiang Chen asked back with a smile. Jiang Chen was very careful in his wording, using criminal case instead of T-virus incident, and took the blame on Tanaka's head and put it on his own head, which was really funny. But speaking of it, this policewoman is pretty. She has a delicate nose and a high forehead, but her temper is a bit arrogant. But with this police uniform, there is still a bit of uniform temptation. Miss Shangshan didn't hear any flaws in Jiang Chen's words, and she couldn't help but show some disappointment on her face. The old policeman tugged at Miss Shangshan's sleeves, pulled her behind him without saying anything, and then bowed to Jiang Chen at a 90-degree angle. I'm really sorry, we definitely didn't misunderstand your meaning. After saying that, the old policeman ignored the dissatisfaction on Miss Shangshan's face and forcibly took her out of the yard. After the police left, the bodyguard walked to Jiang Chen's side. What are your plans for today? Today, Jiang Chen looked up at the sky, looking at the blue sky and the cotton-like white clouds, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It's such a good weather, it's a waste not to go out and play. I've been in Japan for so long, and I haven't been corrupted once. After I finish the last few exams at the end of the month, I will go back to my hometown to explode. Friends who still have votes, don't forget to vote, rolling on the ground, to ask for monthly votes. Chapter 721 Falling Apart. After leaving Jiang Chen's villa, the two had just sat in the police car. Before they had driven far, the old leader Nakajimaji scolded in a low voice. Are you crazy? You actually suspect that the chairman of the future group is the murderer of the missing villagers in Jingu village? But it's suspicious, isn't it? Sun Jiao argued. On the day of the incident, he came home very late. There was obviously a maid in the villa, but he happened to go back to his rental house last night. I think what Miyuki said makes sense. The detective driving the car turned around and said. The old policeman snorted and refuted the opinions of his subordinates. What's the motive? Would the chairman of a large group with a market value of hundreds of billions dirty his hands to do this? Don't forget that we are just here to understand the situation. Since the T-virus has appeared, let the people of the Self-Defense Force Investigation Department handle it. This kind of big case is not something that a small police station like ours can handle. Being scolded by the leader, the detective driving the car smiled awkwardly. Senior Ito is right. After a pause, Officer Ito stared into Usujiaoi's eyes through the rearview mirror and said seriously, I warn you, don't act on your own. If you're not careful, this will be a diplomatic dispute, and may even lead to more serious problems. Think about it carefully. Yes, after a long tone of response, Usujiaoi pouted and looked away. Although she agreed verbally, the expression on her face was full of disapproval. What does the chairman of a large group with a market value of hundreds of billions will dirty his hands to do this? It's so weird to measure a person's quality by assets. No matter from which angle you look at it, his performance is very suspicious. Okay. Taking a deep breath, Usujiaoi glanced at the villa in the rearview mirror, and his eyes were stained with a bit of determination. Since you all don't believe it, then I will prove it to you. Is it tight? Well, yes, it's a little big. Oh. Isn't it better to be a little bigger? No, it's very uncomfortable. How about this? Well, it's okay. Can you go in a little bit more? No, it can't go in anymore. Chinatsu tightened her toes into the boots and lifted the back of the boots with her index finger. Jiang Chen watched with a smile on his face and nodded with satisfaction. It feels good. Let's buy this pair. But, this pair of shoes costs 1 million yen. Is that really okay? Looking at the label, Chinatsu's eyes sparkled with little stars, and she swallowed unconsciously 1 million yen. This is equivalent to the annual savings of most Japanese employees. It's okay, I'm in a good mood today. Jiang Chen smiled and took out the bank to pay the bill. The waiter packed the shoes and handed them to Chinatsu with a smile. Holding the packaging bag in front of her chest, Chinatsu buried her head a little shyly, not knowing what she was thinking. But Jiang Chen didn't notice this. It's just 1 million yen. Compared to his assets, this amount of money is nothing. What's more, the yen is as cheap as paper now. Under the guidance of Chinatsu, a local, Jiang Chen still visited many interesting places throughout the day. But it's also funny to say that many of the landmark attractions they visited are already considered as his assets. For example, the 109 building, Shinjuku Shopping Street. Rather than saying it's a tour, it's more like a backyard tour. Although the streets are much less crowded after the virus crisis in Shinagawa district, the shops here are still open for business. Jiang Chen basically walked around all day, and at night, Jiang Chen made up an excuse and asked the maid who led the way to go home first. The accompanying bodyguard had already helped him get rid of the reporters who were following him. After all, Jiang Chen had just attended a press conference 2 days ago, and now everyone knows he is here. With his current net worth and the media exposure that is not in line with his net worth, it is impossible for reporters not to be interested in him. If those reporters follow him, it will be a waste of fun. The sky above Ice Bay is sunny and bright, and it is a good day for tourism and vacation. If it were normal, this golden beach should be full of young and beautiful figures, but at this time, this place is sparsely populated. The sky above the entire Japan is shrouded in dark clouds. Invisible, the dark clouds lingering in people's hearts. In a beach hotel by Ice Bay, a white man and an Asian man sat opposite each other at a table. There were 2 cold drinks on the table, and 2 equally cold faces were reflected on the ice-covered water. The white man looked at his watch and broke the silence first. "Any news about Tanaka?" The Asian man shook his head. The white man was silent for 2 seconds and continued to ask, "Can we contact my lord?" The Asian man suddenly laughed, and his laugh was helpless. "You know, only Tanaka can do it. Tanaka has remained silent about the way to communicate with the black ship. Even to his confidants, he did not reveal more secrets about the black ship. After all, for such a semi-religious organization, maintaining the mystery of the Pope can keep members in awe and maintain the cohesion of the organization. However, the disadvantages of doing so are also obvious. If he, as a spiritual leader, dies, the entire organization will become a mess, and those secrets will be taken to the grave. Tanaka obviously did not consider this. He never considered that he would die one day. Where is Charles? Why didn't our brothers in Europe come?" asked the Asian man. "Charles is dead." "Dead?" The Asian man showed some surprise on his face. "Since the Rothschild family came to power, our brothers in Europe have had a hard time. Willie will hunt us all over Europe. They think we have the golden apple in our hands. Those idiots are as annoying as flies." A hint of disgust flashed across his brows. The white man paused and continued, "The situation in America is getting worse and worse. Tanaka's action last time was too hasty. The missing pilot Gordon was found in Singapore. The FBI has begun to investigate us. What about Japan? As soon as the T-virus was leaked, the Japanese authorities and Tequila Pharmaceutical turned against us." The gloom on the Asian man's face became thicker, and his teeth biting the straw rubbed fiercely. "What's the overall situation?" asked the white man. "Very bad." The Asian man only answered with 3 words. "I think so too." The white man smiled bitterly. The topic was suddenly interrupted. The two sat there silently, as if in a daze, as if thinking about the future. The silence lasted for a long time. Suddenly, the white man spoke again. "You said, since he has the Lord's blessing, why can't Tanaka be resurrected? He is the spokesperson chosen by the Lord. It shouldn't be." "What do you mean by that?" The Asian man vaguely guessed what the white man wanted to say and frowned. "I mean, are we abandoned?" As soon as this sentence came out, both sides saw confusion and bottomless fear in each other's pupils. What should we do next? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 722. You choose it yourself. Tokyo at night is like a layer of neon lights. Among them, the dazzling streets, led by Ginza, interpret the word delight and revelry to the extreme. This is the most prosperous street in Tokyo and the best place to have fun. 3 Mercedes-Benz cars stopped next to a beautiful club. On the tall sign, there were 5 big characters. Yoshiwara Club. Jiang Chen had only heard that this was the most famous high-end club in Ginza and even in the whole of Japan. It is said that the person who paid for the construction of this club was a big boss of the Liberal Democratic Party, and the purpose of his payment was to allow politicians in his circle to come to this club to have fun while discussing party secrets. If they went home to discuss the meeting, they would be waiting for reporters, and it would be too old-fashioned in the parliamentary hall, so they used high-end bars instead. And by the way, they could also enhance their relationship through some entertainment programs. Now, the people who come here are not necessarily politicians, but also many bosses and bankers of large companies. Because this club was established based on the highest level clubs in Japan, there are strict identity restrictions for the people who are received. Either you have to be a member, or you are brought in by a member, or you have to prove that your assets exceed 10 billion. The club will promise to keep secrets for members. It's not that there are no reporters who want to sneak in to see what kind of heavy-tasting entertainment projects those high-ranking ministers and big entrepreneurs have played, but they all disappeared without exception. In the spirit of playing something high-end, Jiang Chen came here directly. However, he just showed his passport, and the club's receptionist respectfully invited him in. "Don't you need me to provide proof of assets?" Jiang Chen joked. "Mr. Jiang, you are joking," the receptionist said with a smile. "Now everyone knows that you bought half of Tokyo with 11 billion US dollars. The receptionist quickly helped him get a membership and handed the gold-rimmed membership card to him respectfully. "This membership card is for personal use only. It is the highest level membership card of Yoshiwara Club and can enter the club's top private room." Jiang Chen took the card, glanced at it, and threw it into his pocket. "Can I bring a bodyguard? You are the most distinguished S-level member, of course. But the club has a rule that bodyguards can only stay at the corridor door, cannot enter the private room, and cannot carry metal objects. Your private room is number 210. Do you need me to take you there?" "No, I'll walk around by myself." Jiang Chen was still quite curious about this legendary top-level high-end club in Japan. What kind of perverted things would there be here? I heard that there are some interesting entertainment programs not only in the private room, but also outside the private room. After speaking, Jiang Chen turned to look at the bodyguards behind him and ordered, "You don't have to follow me. Wait for me in the car." Yes. It was too troublesome to bring metal objects into the venue and take off the mechanical exoskeleton, so Jiang Chen simply left the bodyguards outside and walked along the red carpet along the corridor towards the private room. Along the way, he did see people performing on the stage in 2 public rooms. But what disappointed him a little was that the performances were too serious, and they really didn't look like what a nightclub should look like. But after thinking about it, he was relieved. After all, it was a high-end club. It couldn't be a public place to hold programs that the masses like to see and hear, right? That would be too low class. It's not played like that in heaven or on earth. Don't get me wrong, Jiang Chen is referring to square dancing, which is as pure as it can be. Those who think of it wrongly should go to face the wall. Standing in front of the stage and taking a look, Jiang Chen felt that he really had no interest, so he turned around and walked out the door. "Excuse me, are you Jiang Chen?" Hearing someone calling his name, Jiang Chen stopped and looked back. He saw that the man was wearing casual clothes and his hair was sparse, but it was combed very neatly. He had a high nose bridge, a wide forehead, and a bit of the temperament of a superior. "I think the people who can enter the door of this Yoshiwara Club will not be unknown people." "Excuse me, who are you?" "My name is Mitsu Hiroto, the head of the Mitsu Group." Mitsu Hiroto walked up to Jiang Chen with a smile. "I didn't expect to meet the world's richest man here. It's really an honor." "It's all just a false title. It's far from the world's richest man. Jiang Chen smiled and said politely, "Excuse me, is this your first time to come to such a place, Mr. Jiang?" Mitsuhiroto asked with a smile. "Oh, why do you say that? Generally, only people who come here for the first time will look around," Mitsuhiroto said with a smile. "If it's convenient, please allow me, a regular customer, to take you around. It's better not to bother, I'll just take a look." Jiang Chen declined. "Believe me, you will definitely be interested. After all, I'm a member of the Asian branch of the Black Ship organization." When saying the word black ship, Mitsu did not say anything, but just made a lip shape. Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes slightly, but his expression did not change. "Oh, then please lead the way, Mr. Mitsu. This way, please." Going up to the second floor, Mitsuhiroto took Jiang Chen into a unique private room. The two of them sat on the sofa. Mitsuhiroto took a pot of wine from the side and poured a glass for them in a small porcelain cup. "Mr. Jiang doesn't seem very surprised about my identity." Mitsuhiroto looked at Jiang Chen with a little curiosity. "What's there to be surprised about?" Jiang Chen said with a smile. "The black ship without Tanaka is not terrible, just like the future group will be left with nothing without Jiang Chen. To be honest, I'm very frustrated by your indifference." Mitsu sighed. "You must have solved Tanaka. You should have seen it on the news." Jiang Chen smiled. Mitsu shook his head. "You can talk here without worry. Mr. Jiang, don't play dumb. You and I both know that bullets alone can't kill him. At most, he will waste a substitute. If I'm not mistaken, he didn't die in Kenya, but in Tokyo. It seems that you know a lot. So what? What is your purpose in confessing these to me?" Jiang Chen looked at him and said lightly, "I have no other intention in confessing this to you." Mitsu paused for 2 seconds, looked at Jiang Chen, and continued in a sincere tone. "The Mitsu family became a member of the Black Ship only because of historical reasons. When the Black Ship deteriorated, we have been trying to draw a clear line with it. But under the threat of Tanaka, we can only pretend to be with him. For example, provide them with funds?" Jiang Chen said playfully. Mitsu's expression was a little embarrassed. "Yes, but we have already reflected on it. To show our sincerity." As he said, Mitsu took out a USB flash drive from his sleeve and put it on the table. "What is this?" "It contains a list." Mitsu looked at Jiang Chen. "A list of all members of the Black Ship's Asian branch." Jiang Chen held the USB flash drive and looked at Mitsu playfully. "This guy is quite smart. Knowing that the Black Ship is doomed, it is only a matter of time before he is liquidated as an accomplice. And Jiang Chen was able to kill Tanaka in Japan, and the strength he showed has made Mitsu Hangyoun feel afraid. Therefore, he took the initiative to hand over the list to Jiang Chen, the mortal enemy of the Black Ship, in exchange for his name being crossed off the list. The reason why he gave the list to Jiang Chen was not to the Japanese government. I think he also planned to use Jiang Chen to kill those offline members of the Black Ship organization lurking in Asia. With the ruthlessness of Xinghuan trade, those Black Ship members whose identities were exposed would never be allowed to live. Since you have chosen to betray, then betray thoroughly. Even if one survived, Mitsu would probably have to live in unrest, so he might as well kill with a borrowed knife and eliminate these troubles. Interesting. Jiang Chen put away the USB drive, and a smile appeared on his lips. "I hope this is enough to wash away my sins," Mitsu said hypocritically. "I will." Jiang Chen smiled. After receiving a positive answer, Mitsu finally breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Thank you, Mr. Jiang. To express my gratitude, I will treat you to your consumption here today." At this time, a bodyguard in a suit and leather shoes pushed the door open and walked to Mitsuhiroto's side and leaned over to whisper a few words. As if he had heard some interesting news, Mitsuhiroto's eyebrows slightly raised, turned his head, and whispered a few words. The bodyguard said hi and immediately walked out the door. Mitsuhiroto turned and looked at Jiang Chen with a smile. "Speaking of which, we have been talking about business for so long, it's really embarrassing. I guess Mr. Jiang came here to relax, right? It just so happens that we have an entertainment program to watch." As soon as the voice fell, the door of the private room opened again. Two burly bodyguards came in carrying a chair. Sitting on the chair was a beautiful woman in casual clothes, with tape on her mouth, maintaining an indecent sitting posture, and her hands and feet were tied to the back and legs of the chair with nylon ropes. Looking at that face full of fear, Jiang Chen always felt that she looked familiar. Woo woo. The beauty twisted and struggled, trying to break free from the chair. However, this kind of chair is obviously a special prop for S/M. How could it be easily broken free? Prepare 10 male actors and a camera. Mitsu Hiroto said lightly. Hi. One of the bodyguards nodded. Hearing Mitsu Hiroto's words, the beauty's expression became even more frightened, and the two long legs tied with nylon ropes struggled hard. However, no matter how hard she tried, the center of gravity of the chair was as stable as a poi, and the rope did not show any signs of loosening. After watching for a long time, Jiang Chen finally realized where he had seen this girl. Isn't this the female police officer in the morning? More than a dozen burly men came in, along with a photographer. Just when Miss Shangshan Kui was completely in despair, Jiang Chen suddenly spoke. Leave her to me. Such a pretty girl, it's a waste to make a movie with her. Mitsu Hiroto smiled, responded to Jiang Chen's eyes that every man could understand, and stood up. Then I won't bother you anymore. I wish Mr. Jiang a good time tonight. He bowed and turned to walk out the door. Others also left one after another, leaving only the two people in the room. Seeing that she didn't have to be gang raped, Shangshan Kui breathed a sigh of relief, panting slightly. Jiang Chen walked up slowly and tore off the seal on her mouth. Because the action was too rough, it hurt her so much that tears almost fell out. Hey, long time no see, although it wasn't long. Looking at Jiang Chen's teasing expression, Shangshan Kui gritted her teeth, endured the humiliation, and squeezed out these words from between her teeth. Hurry, help me untie them. Why? Shangshan Kui was stunned. She originally thought that Jiang Chen had a change of heart and was going to save her, but she didn't expect. Seeing her expression gradually returning to fear, Jiang Chen reached out and turned on the camera close at hand and said evilly, who said I want to untie you? Whip, candle, or wooden horse, you choose. Or, do all of them. There seemed to be a lot of props in the private room. Chapter 723 You Devil. With a long sigh, Jiang Chen took out a bottle of chilled red wine from the refrigerator. He didn't care about the string of zeros on the price tag. He just pulled out the bottle cap, took 2 sips from the bottle, and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Leaning against the refrigerator, Jiang Chen noticed the unfriendly gaze and smiled at Shangshan Kui with disheveled hair, holding the bottle in the distance. Would you like a glass? With a small nose, a high forehead, and a proud and arrogant attitude, as well as the student temperament that has not faded, she should have just graduated, otherwise she would not have done such a brainless thing. Infiltrating and searching? Can you sneak in here casually? It's a pity that she was wearing casual clothes when she sneaked in here. If she was wearing a uniform, it would be more perfect, especially the long legs. It's hard to imagine that such a beauty can grow in an island country that is rich in carrot legs. But there is one thing that is beyond Jiang Chen's expectation. I didn't expect that this girl is actually a first timer. Looking at the bright red color that slid down the stool legs and white ankles and onto the carpet, the corners of his mouth curled up a little. I'll take it as your consent. Anyway, someone is treating us, so why not drink it? Jiang Chen took another bottle of red wine from the refrigerator, and this time he looked at the label. Wow, a bottle of red wine costs 100,000, and it's in US dollars. Although he has drunk more expensive wines, he still couldn't help but be amazed. The things in this private room are really not affordable for ordinary people. Jiang Chen returned to Miss Shangshan with 2 bottles of wine and sat on the sofa opposite her. He admired her graceful figure with a smile for a moment. Do you have a boyfriend? Looking at the grief-stricken expression on her face, Jiang Chen laughed heartlessly. It seems so. I say, is your boyfriend a eunuch? You devil. With tears hanging from the corners of her eyes, Shangshan Kui squeezed out these words from between her teeth. On the contrary, I helped you drive away the demon, and saved you by the way. Jiang Chen put on his clothes, pulled out the SD card from behind the camera, and looked at her with a sly smile. And in fact, in the back, weren't you quite cooperative? The blood red color crawled from her neck to the roots of her ears. Shang Shanky gritted her teeth and stopped talking. Don't look at me like that. Jiang Chen smiled at her hateful gaze and got up from the sofa. He walked next to her, leaned down, and whispered in her ear, even if I don't do anything, do you think you can escape? You obviously don't realize where this is. If you go out for a walk later, you might see your minister having a heart-to-heart talk with a middle school student. Of course, it might be the prime minister. From the identity of the guests coming in and out of here, can't you tell anything? If you don't want to disappear from this world, you'd better be good. Jiang Chen smiled and pinched the SD card, slid her cheek, and lifted her hair behind her ears. Let's take today's incident as a lesson. I don't care what you are investigating me for. I advise you to stop. Otherwise. After a pause, Jiang Chen leaned close to her ear and said half jokingly, then I will teach you a lesson again. Jiang Chen emphasized the word teach. From the frightened expression on Shang Shanky's face, Jiang Chen knew very well that this girl had taken his words to heart. If he really did nothing, the club would not let her go. Even for the benefit of other members, they would have to keep some evidence in their hands, or simply let her disappear. Well, these reasons were found out afterwards. Jiang Chen didn't think so much at the time. If he didn't eat the meat that was right in front of his mouth, it would really be inconsistent with his unscrupulous style. He threw the SD into the storage space and kept it for later appreciation. Jiang Chen left the club directly, got into his car, and returned to his villa in the suburbs. When he got home, it was almost 2 o'clock in the morning. Chinatsu had already gone to bed, and Jiang Chen did not wake her up. After washing up, he went straight back to his room and slept until dawn. The next morning, Jiang Chen got up early, jogged along the street, then returned to the villa, turned on the computer, and browsed the news. As he expected, after the news of Tanaka's death, Tokyo's housing prices showed signs of recovery. At least the momentum of large-scale selling was curbed. And just last night, Future Human Biology announced that it had authorized 11 pharmaceutical companies to produce patents for TNT virus vaccines in order to expand the popularity of vaccines, and vowed to kill the zombie virus in the bud. For each vaccine produced by these pharmaceutical companies, they must pay Future Human Biology a patent fee of $1.50. Because of these two pieces of news, people's panic about the T-virus has finally cooled down a lot. On the other hand, the Bank of Japan further expanded monetary stimulus measures, and the Congress also put forward a recovery and construction plan, which have played a certain positive role in Japan's domestic economy. The exchange rate of the yen against the US dollar has rebounded, but it will take some time for these rescue measures to take effect. According to the analysis of the professional manager hired by Jiang Chen, housing prices in Tokyo are still seriously undervalued. The total value of the $110 billion of real estate he acquired in Tokyo has rebounded to $10.5 billion, after falling to $9.7 billion. When the Japanese economy recovers to the level before the outbreak of the virus, the $11 billion of real estate will surely increase tenfold. Hearing this, Jiang Chen couldn't help but regret not buying more at the beginning, as he still had more than $20 billion in his personal account. Although the value is low now, there is no transaction volume. Those small buildings may still be sold, but landmark buildings such as the 109 building are no longer willing to sell. So much so that Jiang Chen is considering whether to make the information he has about Hiroshi to Nomura public directly, or keep it to threaten the Japanese government in the future. If the information is made public directly, Japan's economic situation will undoubtedly deteriorate again, so that he can take advantage of the chaos to acquire several more properties and bankrupt companies. While Jiang Chen was browsing the web, Chinatsu brought her breakfast and a cup of fragrant freshly ground coffee, and said softly, "Master, enjoy your meal. If you need anything, just call Chinatsu." "Well, you can go do something else first." Jiang Chen nodded and smiled. After Chinatsu left the room, Jiang Chen clicked on a few web pages. When he saw that there was nothing to see, he took out the USB flash drive he got from Mitsu from the storage space and downloaded the list. Looking at the long list, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Very good. As long as this list is sent to the ghost agents, it will be a game of cat and mouse. After crossing out Mitsu's name, Jiang Chen downloaded the list to his watch and sent it to Aisha through a simple message so that she could dispatch the ghost agents deployed in various Asian countries to carry out assassination missions. After finishing these tasks, Jiang Chen leaned back in his chair and stretched comfortably. Just as he was planning what to do today, the watch on his left hand suddenly vibrated. It was news from the end of the world. The destroyer hovering in the waters near Wanghei City finally made a move. Chapter 724 Undersea Research Station. There is still more than half a month until the new year, but at this moment, a layer of dark clouds is shrouding the sky over Liaodong town. The destroyer hovering in front of them makes the survivors living on the deck of the Bohai feel strongly uneasy. They have always maintained a certain degree of superiority over the survivors on land, because there are no zombies, alien species, predators, and mutants on the aircraft carrier, and they don't need to struggle to survive like the survivors on land. But now the situation seems to be reversed. The threat from the sea makes them feel the fear they have never experienced before. Fortunately, Jiang Chen fulfilled the mutual defense agreement, and NAC sent troops. The fortifications of Hengsha Island have been built, and the Fireball 1 rocket cluster system, 2,000 rockets, and Type 50 joules electromagnetic guns are deployed on the island. Under the leadership of Cheng Weiguo, a 1,000-man scale reinforced battalion is stationed here. NAC has no navy, and even a few ships. But it doesn't matter, NAC has the best artillery in the entire Pan-Asia. Just a few days ago, a barrage of rockets covered Hengsha Island, and the army soldiers subsequently landed and wiped out 2 alien nests. The whole process was easier than sweeping the floor. Perhaps because they had seen the powerful force of the NAC, the destroyers cruising near Wanghei City had become more restrained. At least they were not so opposed to the idea of dialogue. On the shore of Hengsha Island, a spherical submersible surfaced. From the appearance, this submersible was somewhat similar to the water drop number 1 that Jiang Chen brought to the world, except that it lacked the smooth cone at the back. After looking at each other, the 5 soldiers squatting in the bunker stood up, raised their rifles and carefully surrounded them. The hatch on the top of the submersible opened, and a man in a light blue overalls came out. Facing the 5 black muzzles of the guns, he raised his hands calmly. "I have no ill intentions. I want to see your leader. Are you the messenger of that destroyer?" The captain of the 5 soldiers stood up and asked, staring into the man's eyes. "Yes." The man nodded. The captain tilted his head and instructed the soldier next to him. "Go ask your superiors for instructions." "Yes." When the news that the destroyer had sent an envoy was placed on Jiang Chen's desk, Jiang Chen immediately sent someone to take him to the fishbone base to meet the envoy. Seeing his blue outfit, Jiang Chen initially thought it was the uniform of an underwater shelter, but after a careful look at the logo of the work unit, he realized that this was not the case. White Whale Undersea Exploration Station. From the name alone, it seems to be a harmless organization. I just don't know why they have a destroyer. Wu Yu nodded to show respect after seeing Jiang Chen, then stretched out his right hand and shook hands with Jiang Chen. "I'm Wu Yu, the deputy captain of the Seagull." Jiang Chen, the marshal of the NAC military government. Jiang Chen released his hand, looked into his eyes, and then asked, "I don't think anyone would have a good impression of a warship at their doorstep. In order to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings, please explain your purpose." "We are definitely here for peaceful purposes. You can rest assured about that," Wu Yu said sincerely. "Really? Then why didn't you come to greet us until now?" Jiang Chen said with a smile. It was not until the NAC made a big move on Hengsha Island that they sent out the envoy. Jiang Chen would never believe that they had intended to have a dialogue from the beginning. Hearing Jiang Chen's question, Wu Yu sighed. "To be honest, even though I personally oppose war, not everyone loves peace. There will be no real peace between giants and dwarves. Only 2 giants on an equal footing have the capital to negotiate. Do you understand what I mean?" "Yes." Jiang Chen nodded, looked at him with interest, and continued, "But what you said surprised me. It seems that, even if you stay at the bottom of the sea, you are still not out of touch with this doomsday. We are not completely isolated from the world." Wu Yu spread out his hands. "We are different from the shelter. When the doomsday nuclear war comes, we only have 1 month of supplies. After 3 months of frugality, we still have to find a way above sea level. Very good. It seems that you plan to trade with us? Jiang Chen said with a smile. But I still have a question. I wonder if you can answer it for me. How do you manage to live in the deep sea without being attacked by alien species in the ocean? Alien species? Occasionally there are aggressive alien species like mutant sharks or mutant killer whales, which may pose a threat to our production and life. However, 10 years ago we developed a sonar to drive away mutant fish. Although those mutant creatures are scary, they are no longer dangerous. After a pause, Wu Yu looked at Jiang Chen. How is it? Are you interested in trading with us? What do you need? Jiang Chen asked. We need any resources. Food, steel or ore, and energy. Wu Yu said. Food may not be so urgent. Seaweed is the best source of nutrient mixture, and some fish with low mutation degree can also be eaten. But energy is a basis for the existence of the underwater research station. Without energy, they can't even get oxygen to survive. Unfortunately, although many sea beasts are huge, they don't have subcrystals that match their danger. Compared with the ammunition wasted when hunting, the subcrystals they get in exchange are obviously not enough to make ends meet, so they have only two ways to get energy. One is plunder, and the other is trade. Hearing Wu Yu's words, Jiang Chen smiled. Then, what can you give me? It depends on what you need. We are good at underwater construction and seabed repairs, and we can also escort your trade fleet. Wu Yu said. Jiang Chen nodded. The first two are useless. There are so many resources on land, and he has no plan to expand to the seabed for the time being. Providing escort for the trade fleet will definitely be welcomed by the merchants in the 6th district. Without the threat of those large alien species in the deep sea, ocean trade would be much safer than land trade. Your proposal is good. Regarding the escort of the trade fleet, I can arrange for you to talk to the council of the 6th district. The merchants there should be very interested. If the white whale research station can really sail freely in the deep sea, then the Nax caravan will be able to radiate to Southeast Asia, Japan and other regions by land and sea, and spread its influence to more distant places. As long as the price is reasonable, cooperating with them is definitely a choice with more advantages than disadvantages. But speaking of the deep sea, Jiang Chen suddenly remembered something. After signing the trade agreement, Jiang Chen asked Wu Yu, since you can go to the deep sea, can you tell me about the space elevator of the Pan-Asian Cooperation? Chapter 725 Recovering the Space Elevator. Returning home in a daze, Aoi Suji didn't know how she left the Ishimura Club, nor did she know what expression she had when she walked into the 50 square meter single apartment. After taking a shower, she fell asleep on the bed. When she woke up at noon the next day, she found that the pillowcase next to her cheek was soaked. Thinking of what happened yesterday, her body trembled involuntarily. She took out her mobile phone from the bedside table, and her fingers holding the phone rubbed the screen unconsciously. She didn't know who to call. The ding-dong sound of receiving an email suddenly startled her. She was relieved when she saw the sender. It was a work email. As expected, the search warrant she applied for yesterday was rejected without suspense. Plans can't keep up with changes. She originally planned to investigate Jiang Chen first and find evidence of his relationship with the Tokyo suburbs virus incident, and then get a search warrant from her superiors to become a legend in the Tokyo police world. Now it seems that her plan is just a joke. Tears slid down involuntarily, rushing down her self-esteem. She wanted to call the police, but suddenly she felt that her idea was ridiculous. She was from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. Who should she report to if she wanted to call the police? She suddenly felt so regretful. If she hadn't acted on her own yesterday, she wouldn't have. She wanted to call her boyfriend, but she didn't know how to seek comfort from him. She couldn't even bring herself to talk about what happened last night. However, the funniest thing was that the figure that frightened her was like a demon that couldn't be shaken off her mind. Space elevator? You finally asked the right person. We know that thing very well. Wu Yu suddenly laughed. Before the station, one of the tasks of our white whale undersea research station was to investigate the geological environment of the sea area near the base of the number 03 space elevator, detect geological disasters, and assist in repairs. What's the situation there? Jiang Chen asked immediately. It was bombed thoroughly. Wu Yu spread his hands helplessly. I still remember that day. At the beginning of the war, the track that went straight into the clouds was hit by several missiles. The 30,000-kilometer long graphene rail split into the sea. An entire island was directly cut into by the graphene cable. So, I advise you not to count on that thing. Don't count on it. Just kidding. Jiang Chen has always had his mind on the space elevator. It's just that NAC has never been able to go to the open sea. Otherwise he would have sent people to explore the whereabouts of the pre-war space elevator. For the end of the world with sparse population and resources, and only technology, but no production capacity, rebuilding the space elevator is almost an impossible task, but it is possible in the present world. I think I can still count on it. Do you have any way to drag the wreckage of the space elevator to the near sea? Jiang Chen asked. Wu Yu looked at Jiang Chen with an expression like he was looking at a madman, sweating. Do you know how heavy the base of the space elevator is? How much? It has a displacement of 10 million tons and no power system. After anchoring, it can only be redeployed with special transportation equipment, not to mention that it is still sinking to the bottom of the sea. Let alone transporting it to the shallow sea. It is not an easy task to get it to the surface of the sea. Is that so? Jiang Chen frowned faintly. What's the use of you wanting a space elevator? That thing can only be deployed at the equator. Wu Yu asked. There is another sentence Wu Yu didn't say. That is, the outer space of the Earth is now full of space junk, which looks like an asteroid belt from a distance. In such an environment, there is no way to develop outer space. You don't need to worry about me. Jiang Chen waved his hand, and after a moment of silence, he continued, how about this? You provide escort for our engineering ship, and we will be responsible for the consignment. We will discuss the price later. I will convey your proposal to my superiors, and give you a reply tomorrow at the latest. Wu Yu nodded. Then go quickly. Jiang Chen said. It is not impossible to build a space elevator from beginning to end. The Graphene Research Institute in the present world has developed graphene cables that can serve as space elevator materials. Although it cannot be built to the level of the 22nd century, the initial stage of the space elevator can still be built. However, unlike Penglai City, even if all the production capacity of the Zinma Special District is invested in the space elevator project, it will take at least 5 years to complete the entire project. In other words, it will take until 2023 to complete the space elevator. But if the wreckage of the space elevator and the end of the world can be brought to the present world, it will be much easier. It is not impossible to complete a project that takes 5 years to complete in 1 year. Wu Yu did not disappoint Jiang Chen's expectations, and the White Whale Research Station quickly agreed to Jiang Chen's proposal. After some bargaining, the two sides finally reached a preliminary cooperation agreement. NAC set up a port on Hengsha Island, north of Wanghai City, for merchants in the 6th district, to trade necessities with the White Whale Research Station. The trading items include food, raw materials, some daily necessities and industrial products, as well as limited arms. The settlement currency is limited to NAC's universal credit points, and the tariff is tentatively set at 10%. The transportation agreement for the space elevator is written in another agreement. The White Whale Research Station will dismantle and repair the space elevator base for NAC, as well as recover the wreckage of the space elevator that fell from outer space, and provide escort for NAC. NAC is responsible for dispatching transport ships and transport ships responsible for consignment. Because the sinking site of the space elevator is far away from Wanghai City, and the depth of the sea near Wanghai City is relatively shallow, it is not convenient to place the space elevator base. After discussing with the White Whale Research Station, Jiang Chen decided to use Aizhou Taipei as a transit station. Anyway, for Jiang Chen, it doesn't matter where these parts are transported to the present world. If he was not unfamiliar with the White Whale Research Station, it would be easier for him to go directly to the target sea area for transfer. After signing the agreement with the White Whale Research Station, NAC's expeditionary force also completed the mobilization for the expedition. The Order Steel airship can take off and set off along the coastline towards Aizhou Island. It is expected to arrive in Taipei in 8 hours. Accompanying them was the Zhao Group caravan on a supply airship. Their main task was to act as guides and communicate with the survivors on Aizhou Island. The people of the Zhao group were very familiar with the situation in Taipei. The rocket engines and aviation equipment purchased by NAC were all obtained from the rocket launch site in Taipei. The task that Jiang Chen gave to Captain Li Wang was simple: to establish an outpost in Taipei, as well as a radar station and a lighthouse with 200 marines. To establish good relations with local survivor groups under the conditions that allowed, and if possible, to integrate those survivors under the banner of NAC. For this second expedition of NAC, Jiang Chen gave Li Wang a high degree of freedom of action. In the expedition to Hangzhou, the former captain of the personal guard had proved his ability, and Jiang Chen also believed that this captain, who was promoted by him personally, would never live up to his expectations. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.